figured it out.
Before we open the meeting, the city manager has an announcement.
Yeah, I just want to I have a few housekeeping items, and so we have a lot of people here. Welcome, everyone. We're here to celebrate our fire department and many people and many members in our fire department, and that is first on our agenda. There's some people that are out waiting for items that follow the fire department, and appreciate your patience. We just would like to give room to the families and friends that are here to celebrate their family members. So appreciate your patience with that. We're also asking that as you come in and as you move about, just to the best of your abilities, we're still trying to maintain some social distancing, and if you have a mask and you're able to wear it, that would be great. But we know people are at different places, but nevertheless wanted to put that out there. And if you do want a mask, we do have some in back. And lastly, also for those of you who are here in the back, for the item we'll be discussing under new business, and it's with regards to the Whitaker Street intersection improvements. We did have a public hearing at our last meeting, and I just want to remind folks that they will be deliberating at the council level, but the public hearing will not be opened again. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood. But with that, Mayor?
Thank you. With that, I will call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to take the roll.
Council members Walsh.
Here.
Bean.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Edberg.
Here.
Engstrand.
Here.
Oh, well, thank you. Would you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is approval of the council meeting on September 28th, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
Move approval. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Ms. Heinecker.
Mayor and Council, if we could please remove the land use item that's under consent, 6A1, at the request of the applicant.
Thank you. Seeing nothing else, do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, next on the list under visitors and presentations, it's my pleasure to do this proclamation for the Toastmasters. Whereas Toastmasters International, the world's leading organization devoted to communication, public speaking, and leadership skills, provides a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop their communication and leadership skills, which in turn fosters self-confidence and personal growth. And whereas Toastmasters, founded in October of 1924, helping over 4 million, has 300,000 plus members in 149 countries with over 15,800 plus clubs worldwide. Toastmaster clubs are made up of 20 to 30 people who gather weekly to follow an agenda of prepared speeches, impromptu speeches, and evaluations, as members learn through practice by listening to one another and by studying educational manuals from Toastmasters International, which offers guidelines for speeches and leadership, and the monthly Toastmaster magazine is an excellent source to gain everyday speaking tips for both personal and professional use. Now, therefore, I, Joe Emerson, Mayor of the City of White Bear Lake, in recognition of this important observance, do hereby proclaim October 2021 in the City of White Bear Lake as Toastmasters Month. I would like to ask Linda Schmidt to come up. I'm going to come down and present this to her. All right, now we come to another fun thing. So I guess I'll call up Chief Greg Peterson from the Fire Department.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for having us tonight. As you all know, last year was a pretty lousy year for all of us, and so it's been kind of a long time coming to do some recognition of members of the department. And we're going to start with Councilmember Engstrand for his 30 years of service to the department. Steve, there's a number of retirees in the audience as well as current members here to show support for him and the rest of the members here. But Steve had 30 years of service on the department, has served the community in a number of ways, but in particular with the fire department, served as a firefighter, EMT, lieutenant, and captain, and did a lot of different things throughout those years, and we're very proud of what he's done, and so we have an award for Steve. So Steve, we'll have you come on up. You're well protected tonight. So, Steve, as a small token of recognition, it says White Bear Lake Fire on it, Captain Steve Engstrand. So, there you go.
Very nice, you guys. Make the camera slow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not a good friend.
You know it's a good night when you're running out of hands to walk away with stuff. So. All right, so the next person we want to recognize tonight is firefighter paramedic Rob Weidman, and there's a story behind this, so give me some time. It's worth the read. On April 2nd, 2020, we received a call for an alarm sounding in a townhouse complex. Fortunately, firefighter paramedics Rob Weidman and Jeremy Andert were already nearby. They were on the other side of the same townhouse complex providing care for a patient with a medical emergency. While Jeremy continued care for the patient, Rob walked around the building to check on the source of the alarm and found smoke coming from a roof vent of an adjoining unit. He opened the door of that unit and found thick smoke throughout the structure with zero visibility. He shouted into the unit and asked if anyone was inside. Rob heard a faint and scared voice respond back to me. Firefighter Weidman then entered the structure without his turnout gear or breathing protection on. He felt his way through the smoke and found a 60-year-old woman lying on the kitchen floor next to her wheelchair. There was active fire on the stove and cabinets above, so Rob grabbed her and dragged her outside to safety. She received medical care on scene and then was transported to a local hospital where she was treated for smoke inhalation, burns to her hands, arms, and face. After a couple of weeks in the hospital, she made a full recovery and was discharged. An act of valor is considered to be an act that is above and beyond the call of duty, exhibiting exceptional courage, extraordinary decisiveness, and a presence of mind, along with unusual swiftness of action, regardless of his or her personal safety, in an attempt to save or protect a human life. Firefighter Weidman exemplified all of these traits on this fateful day and undoubtedly saved a life. In recognition of his bravery and courage, we present Firefighter Weidman with the Medal of Valor.
Well, since they can't bother to get here, I guess somebody has to.
All right. We're moving as fast as we can. All right,
Yeah, take
all
all
right.
the
The
time
next
you need.
order of item is we recently promoted 4 captains. This is the first time for us, so we have a combination department of full-time staff and part-time staff. And recently we promoted 3 individuals to captain's position as full-time firefighters. And those people are Jeremy Andert, Dylan Berglund, and Matt Stalling. So I'll have all 3 of them come up, and if somebody from their family is going to put their captain's badge on.
Nice.
Nice.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have liked it if I tried to do that without my
Congratulations. The paparazzi. All right, thanks, guys. Okay. The last item of business is for us is the oath of office, and Kara will be providing that. I will call everybody up. So for all of you out there, it's in alphabetical order, so kind of expect to come up as I call you. We'll have you form an arch here so we can Kara can see all of you. All right? All right. So, all right, she'll be right back. To start with, we got firefighter, EMT, almost soon to be paramedic, Megan Bates. She's part-time and has 9 months on. Captain Dylan Berglund, he's got 2 years on. Firefighter, paramedic Brad Boisher is out on a call. He's got 3 years on. Firefighter, paramedic Mitch Brown, he's got 3 months on. New guy. He's full-time.
New guy.
Firefighter, paramedic Tanner Cook, he's part-time. He's got 1 year on. Firefighter, EMT Rebecca Florhog, she's part-time. She's got 8 years on. Rebecca started as an EMT and then found the right side of the force and became a firefighter. Firefighter, paramedic Drew Gadboy, he's part-time. He's got 1 year on. Firefighter, paramedic Jeremy Mock, he's part-time. He's got 9 months on. Firefighter, paramedic Jake Miller, he's full-time. He's got 1 year on. Firefighter, EMT Ray Satnick. I didn't see Ray. Is he here? Oh, there he is. He's kind of hard to miss. I missed him somehow. Firefighter, paramedic Ryan Snyder. He's part-time. He's got 9 months on. And Lieutenant EMT Steve Vober. He's part-time. He's got 9 years on. So come on up, everybody. And Kara will be right back. So wave.
It's a test.
Good thing she's speedy.
Okay. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota and will discharge and faithfully execute the duties devolving upon me as a member of the fire department for the city of White Bear Lake, without fear or favor, to the best of my judgment and ability. Congratulations.
All right, you guys can leave. Thank you.
Before you go, we have a young lady in the front row there that took the oath with the fire department. And
Right.
I'm just saying, she could
Right.
be, you know, she.
Rob has trained her well. Yes.
So apparently she's already got her career in mind.
All right. Success as a dad.
That was precious.
Yeah.
It really was.
Thank you all very much. We're
Thank
going
you.
to go across the way and have a little
Sure.
cake and
We
get
know.
together.
We know the drill. You
Yeah.
go there and have cake, and
Right.
we stay here and work. We know.
I know. Thank you for all your work.
Send us cake back.
Right.
Nothing. We got nothing.
Thanks for all your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was only if council wanted more.
No, we have this. Oh, that's the other.
I got distracted because all of a sudden I realized we're not on.
Got this. I don't know. He's coming to help.
Actually
Wait a minute,
have your
Steve.
presentation in PowerPoint. Yep.
He was going to stay.
Thank you. 12.21.21.
What's going on over here?
His brother. Oh, it's his brother. We were pulled up.
Steve not going to be back.
Kara always has it opened up.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll just tell her to.
Oh, this is not a good night for you, is it? This is not going well. It's been too busy. Yeah.
Butt off over there. Newly certified. Put it in the test.
So, animation slideshow.
Yeah, that'd be worse.
I don't even
It's
have
Get
that.
an axe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We do know where we can get an axe, though, Kara.
Yeah, we'll get in.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all Oh, come on, get your butt.
You won't let me enable. Should we pick up those?
Sure, thank you.
I mean, it's all just.
Well, I'll just turn it over to you. Come on, people, get in here and let's go. Dragon. Oh, Jesus. City's out. This is so. It's usually.
Maybe that's the problem.
Just like,
Where is that fellow that had that presentation? I don't even know where he went. Where's the fellow that had that
there's
presentation on
Thomas.
his stick?
To make sure our staff people think it Joel. Saw Joel.
We're all good. Okay.
Oh, there's Joel. Okay.
All right, I think we'll move on to.
Sorry.
Move on to 4C. Ms. Heinecker, you had something?
Yes, Mayor and members of the council. So we have Joel Dunning here from Wald. But, you know, Joel, I wasn't, unless the council wanted to review the slides and we can find out from council, I think that's what Kara is trying to pull up. We have the PowerPoint presentation that was presented at the last meeting by council.
Yeah.
And we have it on our PowerPoint just as a backup if you had questions, but I'm not sure the council needs to go back and see that again because it's something that we saw not only at the work session in August, but we saw it again at our last meeting, our last regular city council meeting. But what I will go through is just some highlights of the timeline of where we're at.
the money, really.
Yep, right, exactly. That's what we want to, exactly. Yep. So just for those of you who are just hearing this maybe for the first time, this is something we're going to be talking about tonight, about a public safety building project that has been discussed. It goes back to really 2017 with this council when we had a goal-setting session at the beginning of that year, and that was identified by the council as a priority to look at improvements for a public safety building, to include a garage to park the squad cars, and also to look at improvements and replacement of the apparatus bay that holds all of the trucks and equipment for our fire department. So that was in 2017. Then in 2019, the council went ahead and authorized issuance of an RFP for consultant services related to a space needs study and a site master plan, and ultimately Wald Architects was awarded that contract in October. So between 17 and 19, we would revisit this, have discussion, and talk about needs, and then it led to the issuance of an RFP for these consulting services. Then in February of 2020, council held a work session, and at that work session, they reviewed the findings of that space needs study that was conducted by Wald. And then came the pandemic. So there was some time off there until we could regroup, and it wasn't until November then of that year that we met again and more formally revisited the space needs study. And then the council at its work session looked at, there was some preliminary funding estimates or financing estimates from Wald at that time. Council talked about that and how to finance those and different tax impacts related to that. And that was at a work session in November of 2020. Then beginning of this year in January, we approved the council did approve a contract with Wald to enter into the design development phase of the project, which is now complete. So that leads us to today. We had a work session in September last month with Council. Wald had a presentation at that point to get some feedback on details of the design itself. And then there was again a presentation by Wald at our meeting we had a work session in August, and then again at the meeting in September, we had a presentation at our last meeting. So we're here to, I guess, to present it if we have the PowerPoint, but I don't think we need to worry about that because council has seen it. And for those of you who have not had a chance to see it, we do have it on our website, the presentation that was provided. And again, it's a schematic design of the improvements that are being proposed. And just briefly to verbally describe it, and Paul, maybe I'll ask you to help me with this just a bit for that, which I don't include. But primarily it is to house the squad vehicles, the police squad cars for the garage, and I think we have enough for 34. I think is how many we have space for. I'm looking at, looking for nods in the audience. And then we also have the replacement of our apparatus bay, which now it was built actually originally in 1961, where the fire apparatus are held. It's pretty old, and we've had a lot of changes since then, and the equipment has changed a lot since then, you can imagine. It just keeps getting bigger like everything else in our world. So the apparatus bay would hold the equipment, and also some adjustments to the interior to house our new model, which is a combination model. Our fire department now has works with full-time firefighter paramedics, and also our paid-on-call crew, which you saw tonight before you. So it's a combination model, but it does require that some of our firefighter paramedics do spend the night in responding to calls, and that's 24/7, so we have housing accommodations for them as well, as that's included in the design. So there'll be lots of opportunities to look at this design as it moves forward. We apologize that our technology isn't cooperating, but I don't know, Paul, if there's anything else I can add. Council's very, very familiar. We've had lots of meetings with it. I think we're really talking about next steps now. So unless Council wants me to add more to that detail, I'll just move forward. So what was presented at the last, what we talked about was the total project cost when we talked with council about this. Right now the cost is projected to be about $12.5 million for everything that we've talked about, and that would include demolition, site work, construction of the fire apparatus bay, addition of the garage for squads, and then also there's some maintenance on our building, deferred maintenance that we would also include in that project, as well as some interior improvements. So that's total project costs. Tonight, council is not making a decision on saying, yep, we're moving forward with it. Tonight, the decision that we're asking council to consider would be to move forward with final design, which is putting together the construction documents for bids. And that, again, would be an indication that there's continued interest by council to move forward with this project, but it's not an obligation to actually to build the public safety, to move forward with it. That will come later. In the meantime, after tonight, we'll be coming back to council at our next meeting to set a public hearing that's related to the general obligation capital improvement bonds. In a moment, I'm going to have Carrie talk just briefly about them. I think it's important for those who are listening to this tonight to understand there is a process related to the bonding for this building. And then we will also be coming back to council either end of this month or beginning of November to discuss the construction manager and general contractor that will be in charge of this, working alongside Wold, as well as a third-party commissioning agent that will be looking at our energy and mechanical systems to make sure that we're doing the best we can to avoid operational costs in the future. So that will come either at the next meeting or the following meeting. And I want to make sure I didn't skip anything that I thought was important, at least for tonight. And then maybe just lastly, in terms of timeline, what we're hoping for is that it would probably be January, February that the construction documents would be completed. At that time, we'll come back to council with those documents, and council then would make a decision as to whether or not to advertise for bids. And that would be, that's a kind of a, we're ready to go. But the final decision would be then once the bids come in, those will be brought back to council in March, April of 2022. And that is the actual time when council would make a decision whether or not to accept the bids depending on how they come in and award the project. If the project is awarded, it's about a 12 to 16 month construction process, and so it still would be sometime before it's completed. So a lot to happen before then, but tonight what we are doing is we're entering that point where we are now done with our preliminary design and our schematic designs. Those have been completed. Council has seen them. And we are asking council to authorize the next phase, which is development of the construction bids. There is a cost associated with that of $532,000. That cost is part of that $12.5 million that I've talked about. So it's not in addition to all of the costs that we are putting into this project are all part of that end cost. However, it is yet another commitment along the way that council would be making. So let me see. With that said, certainly we're here to respond to any questions. We have Joel Dunning here, who was ready with a really amazing PowerPoint that the council's seen, but for the public to see, so we apologize that that's not working, but certainly here to answer any questions that the council might have. So. If I could, real briefly, I think it's important that at this point we just let Carrie go through the schedule for the general obligation bonds, because there is a public hearing that we will be setting next meeting. And for those of you interested in that process, you'll want to pay attention to the date of that public hearing, and I'll let Carrie talk about that just for a moment.
Yes, we have a preliminary schedule for the events that would go along with this general obligation bond issuance. At the next meeting, the council will adopt a resolution calling for the public hearing to issue the bonds, and then there's a capital improvement plan that goes along with this bond, which is different from our long-range capital improvement plan. This is capital improvement plan just ties to the bonds. So it will be called for then, and then in October and November, we will be working on the capital improvement plan that is involved with the project. And then on November 23rd, so November 23rd is the date of the public hearing. The council will hold the public hearing on the bonds and the capital improvement plan, and will adopt or consider a resolution giving preliminary approval for the bond issuance and approving the capital improvement plan by at least a 3/5 vote of the governing body's membership. And then after that public hearing, there is a 30-day window if people want to have a reverse referendum for it, that there's a 30-day limit. So that would end on December 23rd. because that's within 30 days of the public hearing. And then on our schedule, there is nothing, then it would move to, if the council approves it, it would be going through issuing the bids. And then our bond schedule would pick up again in April of 2022 when the council would receive and approve the bids for the facility, and we'd start the bond process.
Thank you. So that's it for staff report, and certainly we are here to respond to any questions the council might have at this time.
Well, maybe a question.
Member Walsh, did you want?
Just on that topic, the schedule is just a little bit off because, and I appreciate it was in the memo, I still believe we ought to make a play to the legislature to get some help funding this garage. It's the bonding bill is going to be a part of the legislative process, in 2022. The legislature has funded items like this, facilities like this around the state. I think we can make a very good case that it's got a regional significance and it's public safety. There's going to be a premium on public safety projects, I think. So that I just worry about the timing a little bit, or maybe it's okay, but because we have to make a serious, we have to be serious about it. And if they say, well, you're already funding it, then why would we do it? So there's a little transparency there, but. So maybe we slow down a little bit, or maybe it lines up okay, but I just want to keep that in mind because I don't think we'll have a decision on a legislative plan until probably third week in May if they're on time. History says it'll be June, although I don't know.
No, it says it'll be August.
Well, okay, but this is not a budget; it's just a bonding bill, so it's a little less pressure. And there's money everywhere at the state right now, from the federal and frankly the economy. So. I think just let's keep that in mind, I guess, is my message. And if the schedule lines up, let's make a strong pitch to get some help, maybe not on all of it, but on some of it, get our legislators involved, and then have the timing be such that we can accept that.
Yes. Yep. Thank you, Council Member Walsh. And for the council, that is something that we're in conversation with our representatives at the legislature in terms of that timing and how. And then when we have our meeting at the next council meeting, when we set that public hearing, we can talk more about that with you related to bonding. So,
Councilmember Edberg.
So Councilmember Walsh and I have had common cause on this topic. I'm curious, Mr. Walsh, if you have some more tangible suggestions on what that schedule ought to look like, or how that process would roll out at least in your mind, in a more potentially productive way.
Well, Madam Mayor, Councilmember, I think we can get it shovel ready. I mean, they use that phrase. I mean, we can get bids. I mean, we can go through a lot of what was laid out here. I just think we ought to pause a little bit on the financing, so that we ask for help first, and then have the bond schedule. Now, I don't know what that works with this November discussion, but.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, and perhaps, Carrie, you can help me with this. But so moving through with this process as it relates to establishing a public hearing, giving the public an opportunity to weigh in if there is, in fact, interest in a reverse referendum, all of that we would want to proceed with. And we can state in our, through that process in that capital improvement plan, an amount that is greater than we actually bond for. So we would go ahead and we would state in that plan that we'll be putting together for that public hearing an amount that's higher, and then if we're in fact successful in getting the funding, then we don't have to bond. It's sort of like we do in advance of street improvement projects. Oftentimes we'll have a resolution that gives us that opportunity. My caution is that if we don't start that process and we wait until May, then we'll lose a year of construction. And that's the council can.
The other side that we're negotiating in public here. I mean, we're being very transparent, which is fine. But I mean, if the legislature says, well, you've already got approval and you've got it in your plan to bond for the full amount, what do you need us for?
Right.
So,
and Mayor and Councilmember Walsh, and that can be something that can be something we can talk about at the council level, and we'll bring that back at the next meeting. I think the process that was outlined by Carrie Kinsvater is the process is we have to follow through with that process, and there's a time frame within which that has to happen, I guess. So it just depends on what we want to do with the project line, and then strategize.
And to further answer Councilmember Edberg's question, we can ask that question to legislators. I mean, we can get some advice from them. I mean, how we should be, how far along the line we should be.
Yeah.
There's an answer to that question that I think the legislators could give us.
Councilmember Edberg.
So a point where I like the idea. I support all of the logic of this being a regional project, warranting support from sources beyond the taxpayers of this district. Having said that, I'll be very curious to understand the distinctions for when construction starts or the impact on the construction schedule, because given inflation in the construction trades right now and the financial impact that comes from that, there's a
There will be a delay from our schedule if we
so
get statement.
I'd be very curious in understanding that.
Thank you.
Yep. Those bonds wouldn't go out till August of next year. The state bonds wouldn't be let until August or September. So that part of the money would be later. But that's for financial people to figure out.
Councilmember Edberg, you had another.
On a different topic.
Yes.
So, City Manager, thank you for your summary of work to date. I indicated some interest in this topic at our last work study session. I'd like to make it more concrete. I would be very interested in having in writing for our next discussion all of the strategies, the ways that we are going about utilizing in this project to optimize operational costs, reduce energy cost, et cetera, et cetera. I know there was a response. I think there are better responses that might be available, and so I'd like to ask our team to be more concrete in exactly what we're doing with this that minimizes future impact.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Jones.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I just want to make sure that we keep moving forward. What you're saying, asking Councilmember Walsh is reasonable. I mean, our firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, peace officers, I mean, they're living in buildings that are 60, 51, 28 years. It's
no parking.
I just don't want to see this momentum stopped. I mean, it's like they deserve it. It'd be great to reduce the cost. I wish we could roll back to 2008 when we were making $2 million in interest a year, but because of interest, that's not possible anymore. Maybe we could bank, and that we have to go out and bond, but that's, the conditions just aren't the same as they were. So bonding, borrowing money is becoming, but it's no different than what we do as homeowners. It's a 30 to 50 year building. This is the kind of cost. This is the largest project after 14 years that I've been on the project that I'm looking at. Mm-hmm. So it's a big deal, but it's also could serve us for 50 to 75 years.
So with that, we do have a resolution here. Oh, I lost my resolution. I just had it. I'll just take you. No, that's it. Is that it? No, I don't know what I did with mine. I just had it here.
Where's mine?
Yeah, we have a resolution. Well, that's what I was looking for. Oh, I have that. So we have a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Wold Architects to complete the remaining design and construction phases for the public safety building.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to public hearing 5A, our resolution establishing the downtown area special service district levy for the years 2022 and 2023. Ms. Heinecker?
Actually, I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Kane.
Again,
He's just getting something back. There you go.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. If I can find my next agenda item in this mess, sorry.
It's something in the air.
Yes, this is a request from Main Street organization that operates our charming downtown district. And back in 1992, following a Macomb study, both the establishment of Main Street as well as a special service district levy was established. And so it's been in a 2-year period, and it covers all of the properties that are shaded in light blue, pay into the $45,000 a year that's generated by those taxpayers. And it has been renewed 14 times since 1992. and tonight represents the 15th request to renew it once again for the levy years 22 and 2023. On June 1st, the Main Street Board of Directors did receive a petition seeking renewal of the special tax levy, totaling $45,000 or not more than $45,000 a year to promote and beautify downtown district for a 2-year period. And on the next screen, I think you will see that the petition did meet the thresholds outlined by state statute and exceeded each of those areas of the minimum per statute, with the signatures of the properties represented on the petition seeking implementation of this tax levy. Again, as indicated by the finance director earlier, state statute does provide for a veto or override petition. The statutory provision does allow for a petition from owners representing at least 35%, so a bit higher threshold of the building square footage in the district to override the resolution. At this time, the city staff has not received any such petition or negative petition. Opponents, however, do have 45 days from adoption of the attached resolution to file a petition to invalidate the resolution. If no override is achieved, the resolution becomes effective on November 25th of this year. I think, last meeting we had the Birch Lake Improvement District, and the council always kind of appreciates and recognizes when property owners come to the council to implement or petition for this special tax. And downtown White Bear Lake is no different. It really is one of the very first downtown special service districts established within the state of Minnesota. And as noted, it has been renewed 14 times with no override since the initial establishment. And I believe Bruce Boucher is here from Main Street. I hope. I was looking. There he is, hiding in the corner. And if you have any specific questions of him, but they attached to tonight's report and resolution is also an accounting of the last year's budget. And it's been a really great partnership working with Main Street, and the city collects the taxes and then does reimbursement of eligible expenses. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I know that Mr. Boucher is here as well.
Any questions for Ms. Kane? Okay, you have no questions? A motion?
Move to approve. Second.
And a second. Is there any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. It is. Okay, so at this point, Mr. Boucher, if you have anything you want to say, you're certainly welcome to come up now and do that. And if anybody else wishes to address this issue, this will be your opportunity. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor, council members. This is Charisse Letourneau. She does our finances. The one thing I do want to say is this is my first year as president of Downtown Main Street, and I want to thank you all for making my job a lot easier by guiding us through what has been a very difficult, rough year for all of us business people. But I'm here basically to answer any of your questions. I just want to thank publicly to thank you all for providing the help to get us through a really rough 2 years. With that, I'm open for any questions at all.
Anything from the council? I guess you're off the council member Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no questions. I just want to thank you for helping usher this through, and it contributes to our fabulous downtown. Thank you.
We'll look forward to doing it for a couple more years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to land use. 6A was removed. 6B is consideration of a planning commission decision by Daniel Anderson for 3 variances at 1481 Birch Lake Boulevard North. Ms. Kane.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The property is located on the next slide on the north side of Birch Lake Boulevard North, on the west of Otter Lake Road. It is zoned R3 single-family residential, as are the surrounding properties. It is also within the Shoreland Overlay District of Birch Lake. I apologize. The property contains a single-family residence, a 2-car attached garage, and a 135-foot-long driveway. The homeowners, the Andersons, would like to build a pool on the property, and because of the unique shape of the lot and the distance the home is set back from its front property line, there's limited location where the pool could be located, and so they have proposed it on the west side of the home. Therefore, they are here this evening and before the Planning Commission last month to request 3 variances, a 3-foot variance from the 20-foot side yard setback for a pool, a 5-foot variance from the required 51-foot setback from the front yard, and a 2-foot variance for the 4-foot fence height for a fence located within the front yard in order to construct the in-ground pool as desired. And the next slide depicts the specific variations or variances necessary to construct the pool. And as it shows up in pink here, that is the side yard setback along the western edge of the pool where it's too close to the western lot line. The green area of the pool depicts where it's located in the technical front yard of the property, and the yellow highlighted fence is the additional increased height from 4 feet to 6 feet for a pool fence, which is required by state code for any fence enclosing a pool. As you can see on the next slide, the neighboring home to the north is tucked behind the subject property, and their driveway runs along the shared lot line. While it may be possible to angle the pool in a way that reduces the variance along the side yard, staff was supportive of the proposed configuration because it maximized the actual pool location and the living space of the adjacent home. I will say that neighbor did participate in the public hearing and raise some concerns, and I will get to that as I summarize the Planning Commission's recommendation. On this next graphic, it does show the 51-foot setback from the front property line and the encroachment of both the pool and the 6-foot fence into that area. The front setback is based upon averaging of neighboring properties, and both neighboring homes are set back quite a bit. Quite unique circumstances that affects where the Andersons could place the pool on their property. Since the pool will be set back further than what is minimally required by the code, staff was supportive of the encroachment into the front yard because 30 feet is typical in this, and the current home and the pool would maintain approximately a 48-foot setback. Lastly, a 6-foot tall fence is not supposed to be closer to the front lot line than the home, and it would encroach approximately 7 feet into the front yard in order to comply with the building code to have a 6-foot fence for a pool. Letter was received from the neighbor, and the neighbor did participate in the public hearing before the Planning Commission, raising concerns with further obstruction of their view to Birch Lake, which obviously as a lake community we find many improvements around the lake that alter existing views of the lake to be concerning. And so with that input, the Planning Commission was unable to reach a recommendation. They did forward a split vote of 3 in favor and 3 opposed for the Council's consideration this evening. I know the Andersons are here, and I imagine that the gentleman next door who also participated in the Planning Commission is also present this evening, and that is, staff would be happy to answer any questions you might have of us at this time or later on as necessary.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Kane? Council Member Walsh.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. You said that the staff thought that the pool location maximized, I think you used the language, maximized the...
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? I mean, you mean the maximized relation to the other house, so it's...
Kara, if you could go back a couple of slides to where the pool is shown in the different graphics. Next one, that one. You don't see the neighboring houses much, but the living space of the neighbors is to the north and up in that area where they may tend to hang out. And you'll see there's photographs
So it's
later on.
like
That's
closer to the street, away from their living space. That's what you're saying by
closer
maximizing.
to the street, but also like they meet the 20-foot side yard setback
Okay.
on this line. So that's what our code states. You should stay away, must maintain when you're adjoining a neighbor's yard, rear or side yard. And so we're just applying that same approach, even though the lot configuration is somewhat unique, and recognizing that the neighbor's home and its layout on its lot is somewhat unique. But they do, you'll see in some photographs that I believe the neighbor will want to point out where their porch is located, where they sit outside and enjoy that view of the lake.
Okay. And then one more. The fence is a wrought iron fence, like the diagram showed. So it's
Yes, correct.
So it's not it doesn't block the view. You can see right through it.
Yes, it is. Well, it's a 6-foot wrought iron fence that would improve. They're not proposing a solid privacy fence or a picket fence.
It meets the legal requirements to keep a kid out from falling. That's what we want.
Yes.
That's why we want a fence around a pool so nobody wanders into the pool.
Correct.
But it doesn't necessarily block all the view.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could we go back to the slide that shows the entire front yard? So that is a very unique lot, and it's with the road in between the house and the lake. One of the things I was wondering, and I understand the owner never inquired about this, but what about encroaching even further into the front yard and having the pool in front of the house? If the neighbors, I went out and looked at both homes this last week, and I personally don't think it would, if I was a neighbor, it wouldn't bother me. I haven't talked to either of the neighbors if it would bother them if the pool was closer, more in the front yard, but that seems like a solution that, yes, it would require a variance, a very large variance on the front yard setback, but that doesn't look like a front yard in that location. So that's why, is it something that the council could approve, or would it be out of our, is it an option?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bean, it's a good question. It's one that actually kind of was dabbled a little bit at the Planning Commission public hearing. If there were other locations, I don't think we have a pool in the front yard. I don't think staff was giving guidance to the applicants when they came in because of that departure from just the standard here. Are there modifications? Staff has had subsequent conversations with the applicants if there could be modifications to the pool configuration that don't require variances. It could be, modified in its current location. That may still be objectionable to the neighbor. Excuse me. Perhaps less objectionable than, might be more palatable to the immediate next-door neighbor than a pool in the front yard, but I just don't know how we start to differentiate properties on lakes that have a road between them having pools in their front yard. That would be a broader question, I think, rather.
This particular, not only is there a road in between the front yard and the lake, but the setback from the road is so large, is why it looks more like a backyard to me than a front yard. And a question for the city attorney: if I know if we make a habit of granting variances, then someone can come along and disagree with the variance. But if something is so out of the ordinary, would that prevent someone else from something that's not as much out of the ordinary objecting?
Madam Mayor and Council Member, the granting of a variance is always property specific, and so you have to make findings related to that particular property that is what they propose to do. Can it be justified? Are there practical difficulties associated with their intended use of the property that you find to be reasonable, but because of unique circumstances, things don't fit right, and as you know, that's all part of the analysis of a variance. Once you grant, what I'm hearing from staff is it's a bit of a door opening concern that arguably there's justification here. For in this unique circumstance, I can tell you strictly legally, if you do it once, doesn't mean you have to do it a second time or a 10th time or a 20th time. But we all know that the world doesn't operate strictly on what's legally allowed or not. So you get pressure, and then it's, well, we did it there, and then why can't we do it here? And so that's inevitably creeps into these arguments. So I'm hearing staff suggest that some concern about that, and that concern about opening the door, and if it can fit in the side yard, I'm hearing that's preferential if the council approves it at all.
Thank you. Councilmember Edberg.
Madam Mayor. Ms. Kane, the minutes of the Planning Commission refer to agreements between previous owners when this house was constructed. Can you provide some illumination on the nature of what those agreements were, how they comport with our variance and zoning, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, at the public hearing, reference was made to what I would call more of a gentleman's agreement between previous property owners of not to encroach into viewshed of the lake from between a corner of a house and this bur oak tree. But it was never formalized or recorded against the property or reflected perhaps on the buildable area of the property. I know that the applicants themselves are here and will understand that better, but when it's not recorded against even if it is recorded against the property, it's not really the city's to enforce. Of course, if we're made aware of it, we will abide by it. But if it's just a handshake agreement, the city is not kind of in a position to enforce that.
And was there evidence or conversation at the Planning Commission, in front of the Planning Commission, that suggests that this does violate that gentleman's agreement?
I believe that the tree that kind of set a distance may even have been removed. Is that correct? I see the applicants indicating yes. So staff can't ascertain whether it, with the tree being gone, I can't measure that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, as Ms. Kane said, the applicants are here, and I do have one person in the audience that wishes to speak on this, and the applicants are also welcome to speak if you wish. So, Mr. Kruer, are you here? Come on up and state your name and address for the record.
Hi there. I'm Rod Cruiser, live at 1469 North Birch Lake Boulevard. I'm the next door neighbor to the Andersons. I think the agreement that you had asked about, it was more than just a handshake. When the Andersons built their house, and Dan, you can help out, I think it was a 4-foot viewing easement variance that we actually signed for them to do that. It was more than just a handshake. I think the discussion that was talked about was Adana Rask long time ago, splitting stuff up.
Yeah.
So just wanted to clarify that. Been neighbors with Andersons since we moved in 91, actually to the parents to begin with. We're good neighbors. We're on good terms. It's not going to be ugly one way or the other, but I've got to speak my case. They've got to speak their case. Just concerned about viewing of the lake. I had asked about moving it. Again, like Councilman mentioned, it is a huge yard, so there's other areas. The Andersons had even brought up that around the corner would be more sun exposure, but per the Planning Commission's setback rules, this is where they had. So I was just asking, is there another possibility of moving the pool where it wouldn't affect our view? That's all.
Thank you. Council, any questions? No. Thank you. Oh, Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just from your letter, I just want to make sure that's understood, that it's like you granted a variance in 2010 for them to build.
It was just
or you approved it, supported it.
Yeah, it was just for the edge of the house to be a little bit further beyond.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just want to let you know that the photos that you had submitted for the Planning Commission meeting are also in the PowerPoint presentation if you wanted to refer to them for the council's review.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. Now, the applicants are here. Is there anything you wish to say?
I'm Daniel Anderson and my wife Megan, and we live at 1481 North Birch Lake Boulevard. And one of the reasons that we have looked into building a pool was we feel Birch Lake, it's a great lake, but it doesn't feel like it's very swimmable much anymore, and we have safety concerns. I don't know if you remember, but back in, I think it was 2010 and 2012, there were 2 kids that died from an amoeba in Stillwater from a smaller lake that gets warm. So with how low the water's been and it heats up quicker, we're just concerned that for our kids and future grandkids and family, that we don't have a place where we can enjoy the summers and swim. So that was the main reason why we looked at doing this. And we started out working with Ann and Ashton. They helped us identify, like they said, where the best part in the yard was to put the pool. And the other areas in the yard, it is a pretty big yard, but there are problems with all the other areas, whether there's utilities running down there, city gas, city water, trees that are in our front yard that we'd have to remove, or just way too far away, like across the driveway, way down in that corner, that would be problematic as well. So where we are proposing putting it is the best location because we don't have any utilities running through there. And that tree would come down in the back. And when we did this, we obviously have a good relationship with our neighbors, and we wanted to be aware of their concerns and take into account how they use their property. So that's why we went with a wrought iron fence. So it's more transparent. It's a greater cost to us, but it retains some of the viewing that they have. We talked about doing soft plantings and boundaries because they're going to work with a landscape architect. And we met with them and told them we would be willing to keep the plantings to a 3-foot height or no plantings at all. We also modified the plan where the hot tub is no longer in the plan. We are moving the hot tub, freestanding hot tub, underneath the overhang in front of the house so they won't see the hot tub at all. And so we've gone through and made these concessions to try to make it even more palatable to them. And I did a rendering. I don't know, do you have that? The rendering of what the current view looks like, because we would remove a 10-foot high playground system plus a tree and put in the new wrought iron fence. And I did a quick Photoshop rendering of what that would look like and shared that with the neighbors last weekend.
Keep going. Keep going.
If not, I've got printouts too, if it's not in there.
There you go.
So that was, these are the pictures that Rod sent in his email. So that's the view from their deck, and their hot tub is a little bit behind and to the left. And if you keep going, you'll see more
Next
pictures.
One, Kara.
Another view of their front yard. Another view of their front yard from the street. That's our front yard, front side yard. Okay, so that is the view, the current view that you already saw that I took, and then if you go to the next one, you'll see without the tree, without the playground set, and with the wrought iron fence what that looks like. I guess I was arguing that I think the view actually gets improved that way. And we also agreed to not put any diving boards or slides or anything in there, so there won't be any verticality to the pool at all. And we shared that with them, and then we talked to him on Sunday, and they were pleasantly surprised with how it looked. They thought it looked good, but then the concern moved to, well, you're going to have pool furniture out there and an umbrella or something, so now we're going to have to look at that. So I just feel like the goalposts are kind of shifting as to what the issue is. So, and if you go to the next one, I also had some pictures here just to show that their front yard, they do have the pictures that Rod provided, kind of cuts off at their mailbox, and you can see that they do have quite a bit more front yard. Keep going. That's from the street. And then the next one just shows that they do have a parking pad there that they park their cars in that is kind of between the hot tub and the view through our yard as well. So, yeah, we feel like we've been very accommodating in doing this, and we're doing a modest-sized pool. It's nothing too large, nothing too extravagant, and we're just looking to get the most out of our yard and enjoy our yard and use it. And I feel like we're kind of at a point right now where they might not want us out there using it because they have to see us a little bit. So, and I know we're not the Kardashians. We're not beautiful people. So
that's probably in your favor, but
so that's basically our argument and my spiel. Thank you.
Any of the council? Do you have Councilmember Bean?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Was there a preferred location where you got more sun that you would have put forward to city staff if you would consider?
No. I mean, it's when we take that tree down, that area will be very sunny right there. So. And
another question. So there will be no slide. You would be okay if we indicated that in the notes that there's no slide.
Yes, if we build to these variances, we will not put a slide up.
In the conditions.
That could be in the conditions, yes. What about the location of the water pump and water heater and the noise that might come from those? You have
that will be that you can see the back corner on the house right there with the kind of small square window. It could be tucked right there up against the house, or we're going to be moving, probably making the fence go around the house a little bit, so we'll have a little area on the back of the house that we could put it there too. And then, so it's going to be behind the fence, whether it's on this west-facing side or the north-facing side. And I guess I personally don't know, because I've never had a pool, so I don't know how loud they are, but I can't believe it's much louder than when their hot tub is running. So.
Okay. And then the final question, your neighbor mentioned, or actually you mentioned that the neighbor mentioned the pool furniture and umbrellas and that. Would there be a consideration? I mean, I would imagine a pool umbrella is not left up unless you're using it that
No,
day.
And in fact, currently all we own is the frame of the umbrella. We don't even have the fabric. We do have a patio table where we're going to put the hot tub underneath the overhang on the patio, so we have to move that table out, and we're going to put that by the pool somewhere because we would like to sit there, and we might end up using that umbrella, or we might decide, we don't want to use the umbrella. It's not for certain one way or the other, and I guess, I can't say that we're definitely going to have an umbrella or definitely not have an umbrella.
All right, and since you and your neighbor are both members of my ward, I appreciate hearing that you're both putting forth your positions, but whatever the decision is made, you'll still be neighbors.
Yep, absolutely.
Very, very civilized about this, which you're to be commended for. Thank you.
So, and then, okay, I got another comment, but I can make it. It's not a question for him.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Nobody else had a question, right? Okay. Is there anybody else to speak on this particular property? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Here we go. Councilmember Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as I said, I met with both constituents and went to their properties. And I have been out a lot lately, and I've seen wrought iron fences. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that there will be an improvement to the sight line by removing that tree. That tree is very big, and the play structure is very big. I believe that there'll be an improvement to the sight line even with the wrought iron fence. But if we approve this, I would like to see there being a restriction that there be no slide installed, for a future owner or whatever. That's it.
He's agreeable to it, and staff can certainly add that in.
So,
thank you. Anybody else? Thoughts, questions? Councilmember Jones.
I will weigh in. As it looks now, I will not support the variance. You built on a lot. You bought it. You knew what the house configuration was. You got a variance to do so. You're on a lake. Sorry, I'm on Velamo. You got one of the cleanest lakes. As a matter of fact, they give awards when if algae blooms are going to happen, they're going to happen on the south side of town over at Goose, which could use some treatment. But literally, Birch Lake is getting awards. You knew that when you bought the house in 2010 and built it. The pool depth, I'm not buying it. Build your pool, just make it this much shorter. I'm sorry you don't get all the depth that you want. You can still have the pool, just make it a little shorter. I'm looking for the challenge of what's the hardship. It's like you can still build the pool. You're not going to have it as deep. You built the home. You know it was on an odd configuration. Although I would support shifting the pool to the east in front. I would support that and give you the variance over there. But as far as in the front yard, because honestly, this is very unique as far as that side yard looking like a front yard. It's pretty unique as far as how the pie-shaped lots, but I'm not seeing the hardship unless council wants to tell me more information.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you. Madam Mayor and Council, just to be clear, the hardship standard is no longer used for variances.
Okay. Great.
I just want to make sure we're using the right language. Practical difficulties.
Yeah, that would
because
be a
the
good
hardship
idea.
used to be a stricter standard, so it's not quite as strict as it used to be. And I frankly forget that once in a while myself too. So,
Mr. Attorney.
Councilmember Walsh.
Well, just to enter a little debate, I'm leaning towards granting the variances. And I guess to answer your question, it's one of the compelling things that I've seen in the presentation is the amount of feet that they really need for variance. It's very small. I can't remember if you can repeat the numbers, but it's 4 feet, 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet. We've granted much bigger variances. If it's a 30-foot thing, we've given 15 or 50%. These are small variances to fit the pool in. So I guess that's kind of my answer. Is there a big need, or a hardship? I think the hardship argument is matched or beat by the amount of the variance they need. So. The wrought iron fence does it for me. I didn't quite understand that until I got here tonight. I thought a fence blocks your view. A 6-foot wrought iron fence, I don't think blocks the view as much. And we've said this before. It's a difficult thing to hear when you own property near a lake, on a lake. There's no constitutional right to a view of the lake. It just isn't. It's tough, but that's we've done this before. On South Shore Boulevard.
Valid point.
On the other side there. So.
Thank you. All right. Any further comment? Anybody want to move this forward? Yep. Councilmember Edberg.
Madam Mayor, I guess I'm inclined to ask if colleagues think about relocating the site to a mutually more amenable location, even if it's not completely compliant with our historic definitions of side yards and front yards, and if that's worth our conversation or not.
I don't think it looks. Councilmember Engstrom.
I would say no, just due to the hardship. It would be a hardship once it comes into moving all the utilities for putting that pool over there. So I would say no.
Thank you.
I don't like the slip. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
I can understand that, but you built the house. You put the utilities there.
Not necessarily. I didn't have a choice at my house where they went.
But you knew.
And I built my house.
You had it when you built it. So I don't know. I'm just impositioning your neighbors, since look at that view. Now, if I'm looking at that 6-foot fence,
that is the 6. That's the view with the 6-foot fence.
I understand that. If that's a representation, you can see how much that fence does get awfully blocks the view.
Councilmember Bean,
Go back to the picture of the view right now.
Which one is better?
Yeah, come on, Dan.
Stop that, though. I'm looking for the one with, and that's got the play,
isn't it?
the play area and the trees there. And I think the play area and the tree blocks it more.
Oh,
than the
there's
fence.
right there. There's the play equipment. Councilmember Walsh.
Sure, Councilmember Edberg's question. The pool in the front yard starts to impact everybody walking by and everybody driving by. Now we've impacted a lot more people. I don't want pools in front yards.
Okay. All right. Does anybody care to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I will move because I got my mind changed and it wasn't because of you. It was because I listened to reasoning, not, come on, Dan.
The comments that are not supposed to be
Thank you,
going on.
Madam Mayor. I will move to approve and support the variance.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Yes.
Can I just ask for clarification? Does that include the no slide?
Yes, with the no slide. Thank you.
Councilman Bean wanted added in. All right, with that.
Nope, that's what I was going to.
And Councilman Engstrand is good with that. All right. I have a motion. I have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Anderson, go build your pool. We don't do that. No. Please. We don't do crowds, so please stop. All right, moving on to ordinances. 8A, second reading of a city-initiated text amendment to zoning code 1302.120, subdivision 3E, to allow special home occupations to be renewed through administrative variance process. Ms. Kane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is a proposed text amendment to simplify the city's entitlement process for those who operate home-based businesses, also known as special home occupation permits, which they are required to come initially to request a special home occupation permit if they've got customers coming to the home. So that the city can appropriately review, neighbors can have some input on where customers would park, et cetera. That initial shop is just granted for a one-year term, and then they are back to renew it. And I believe if they're successful with their first renewal, they come back in a third-year cycle, so every 3 years after that. Staff initiated this just to simply streamline the approval process because the limited numbers of issues and concerns that we have had come up with home-based businesses and home occupations that have been granted through this special home occupation. So the benefits, as highlighted in this slide, is just to simplify the process both for the business owner as well as shortens the turnaround at the staff, planning commission, city council, and to the residents' benefit, and also reduces the cost. It will also require any neighbors to sign off on an administrative variance. So any concerns that they might have can be brought to the city's attention and hopefully resolved. And tonight is the second reading, and notice was published in the White Bear Press. And I will just remind the council that you have two attachments, both the ordinance as well as the summary resolution that require your attention to facilitate the public notification of this resolution in the newspaper.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Kane?
I'll move the ordinance change.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now I need the resolution establishing the title and summary approval.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to 9A, resolution of municipal consent for the Whitaker Street inspection improvements.
Mayor, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'll summarize this, and I just have a couple slides. Certainly at the last meeting, we had a presentation provided by Sarah Flom, who's here. There she is. And I just took a few from that to summarize the process for council. But so at that last meeting, you heard a presentation from Sarah Flom from MnDOT on the proposed improvements at the Whitaker Street intersection. As it was described at that meeting, because of the proposed improvements, because they'll result in a closure of an access point off the highway, and also acquisition of public right-of-way for stormwater ponds, municipal consent is required by state statute as part of MnDOT's layout approval process. And that slide, I'm not going to read all those lines, but that's really what that slide summarizes, and that was what was shared with council at the last meeting. And following that process, the City Council at its last meeting held a public hearing and took comment on the proposed improvements. However, because we were still awaiting the release of final notice of the federal government's conclusions following the 3-year environmental review process for the Rush Line Corridor project, Council did not act on the municipal consent resolution for this interstreet improvement at that time. Since then, the final environmental decision has been released, which did indicate that the Federal Transit Authority has determined that there is no significant environmental impacts along the corridor for this project. And so tonight we bring this resolution back to council in consideration specifically of this intersection improvement, for this improvement. And the resolution is for municipal consent for access change, there it's up there, to Trunk Highway 61. And that's, again, that change that's just north of the intersection. And also for right-of-way acquisition related to the Whitaker Street signalized intersection improvements. So that's what the consent is for. And then details of the proposed improvements, they were provided in last month's packet, and they were further described by Sarah. This is, again, is one of the many slides in that presentation. That's the only one I'm showing right now, and if council at a later time or if we have a discussion that warrants bringing others up, we have them in the PowerPoint. So Sarah, again, is here tonight to help us through any questions the council might have, as well as Andy Gitzloff is here from Ramsey County if there's questions specific to the project. And with that, the staff does forward a recommendation for approval of the municipal consent resolution that's related to that highway access change and also to the potential right-of-way acquisition. And either we as staff or certainly the staff that's here from MnDOT and from Ramsey County, we're here to answer any questions that the council might have at this time.
Thank you. Council, questions? Thoughts? Concerns?
Question?
Councilmember Walsh.
The memo says acquire land for stormwater management. I don't quite understand that piece. I mean, on the diagram, is the blue on the diagram, is that a future pond? Is that what I'm looking at? Is that blue because it's water, or is that?
Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, yes, and I'm looking at Paul too as the engineer, but yeah, that does represent the future, the potential for the future stormwater ponds. And just to remind council that this is a preliminary design, there may be some shifting in where that's at and the configuration, but this is to depict the impact of ponding and the reason for acquisition of that right away.
And that's new. There's no water there now. There's no stormwater management or anything.
There is not right now.
Yep. So, I mean, the language is, acquire land for stormwater management. I mean, the land we need to acquire is that triangle kind of piece would be west of that, where that pond is, right? So, I mean, I'm just questioning the language a little bit. I mean, are we acquiring land for stormwater management? It's convenient to say that. It's a good thing. It's a good reason to do it. But we're acquiring land certainly for the platform. Maybe, the platform might not be right on the land, but we're acquiring land, to make it work. I mean, is it really that land is necessary for the stormwater?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Walsh. So what the council is considering, and the reason that we have the municipal consent before us, is it's triggered by any right-of-way that might be acquired for use, whether it's for stormwater ponding or whatever the project might, for our project. For this project here, at the Whitaker Street intersection, it would be for purposes of stormwater management. It may be in other trunk highway projects, use of that right-of-way might be for a different purpose. But that is one of two things that triggered the municipal consent. So it is not I don't know, I guess I don't know if
Yeah,
that...
I get it. But there's, you're mixing up terms again for me, and I'm not following maybe. Right-of-way is, or could be, our property, city right-of-way. But, so we're talking about some of that is right-of-way.
Correct.
But also some of it is the property owners. There's the triangle piece of land is not necessarily
Sure.
right-of-way. It belongs to the
Yep.
property owner, and it's not in the right-of-way. And
Madam
we
Mayor-
need that, too, for this project.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, so the municipal consent action is for the right-of-way and for the closure of that access. That is not, the trigger for acquisition of private property does not trigger the need for the municipal consent, if that's the clarification you're asking for.
I'm learning something here. So tonight's vote is really permission and really consent. It's a municipal consent vote on the right of way for
Correct.
stormwater management and the closure of the entry to 61.
That's correct.
So we're not. So it's just, this is a little new for me. I didn't understand that. So the land that belongs to Mr. Idle, the property owner, is not being decided tonight. We're not making a decision relative to condemnation or a negotiation or an eminent domain decision on his land. That's a future decision?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Walsh, yes. Tonight, MnDOT's plans, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that 15%? Is that 15% engineering? So
that's where we are now?
Yeah, that's where we are right now. And so they have not yet initiated any negotiations with any of the property owners, including the city in terms of its actual use of the right-of-way. There is a requirement per state statute that before MnDOT is allowed to proceed with further plans or any activity related to this intersection, because it does affect access off of the trunk highway and it does affect a right-of-way, they need the municipality that's impacted, or that's the jurisdiction within it's housed, I suppose, that the project is, to give a nod and say, we see what you're doing. Let's pretend it's not this particular project anywhere. We see that MnDOT is planning some changes on the trunk highway in our jurisdiction, and it triggered 2 of the 3 things that would require municipal consent. The 2 being, in this case, closure of that access point, and then the acquisition of some right-of-way, public right-of-way for the stormwater ponding. Now, to your point regarding private property, the drawing does depict that in their preliminary plans, it does show the need for acquisition of private property. But that isn't an approval that the city is in front of the city council. That's a negotiation and action between MnDOT and the private property owner.
It's not our right of way.
Yeah, it's not. It's the property owner.
Because it's private, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good to know. I'm going to still make a very strong but-for argument here, though. I mean, but for Rush Line, we wouldn't be talking about this whole project tonight. And but for this realignment issue, Mr. Idle wouldn't be facing a really lopsided negotiation with the power of the state government for part of his land and part of his possession. So it's a little. How do I put this? I mean, it's a little better vote that they were not involving that private property piece, but it's really just it facilitates it, it triggers it, and but for this project and but for this Whitaker alignment decision tonight, he doesn't have to worry about losing really losing part of his land. Losing, I mean, he'll get compensated, but the negotiation is so stacked. I mean, it's a very. That's why I'll just give you part of my speech now. That's one of the biggest problems I have with this decision tonight. Why I'm a huge no. It's that I've been on this council 6 years and we've never even come close to, taking land from one of our property owners. And this is a big deal. And it's a
Please put your
sliver of
signs
land.
down. They're not needed. They have nothing to do with this. Put them down and stop. No, it is not your right to disrupt a council meeting. Sorry. Yes, you are.
You can argue that it's a small piece of land that doesn't help me with how big the land is. It's his land. It's a huge issue. So that's a big part of the vote for me tonight is this, and it's good to know, I guess, tonight that we're not doing it. And ultimately, another government agency may be the ones that actually condemn or use eminent domain or negotiate or whatever it's going to look like. But this vote triggers all of that activity, and it troubles me a lot that we're taking this guy's land. So,
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, to clarify, I mean, it's always the discussion, if not but for, understand, but if not but for, this might not happen. So, yeah, I can't control that. What I can ask the questions and say, okay, so if we're talking about that, he's got a signage. I mean, the sign, he's got it there. How do we make sure as a council that that signage is protected?
Yeah.
You know, if it has to come down because there's the storage pond, and I'm looking at a different photo that basically, if I'm looking at the property line, what I was provided, it's an overhead aerial shot where I'm looking at the footing of the sign going, that could be on public land right now. And I just want to make sure that that's, so the big pylon stand, I'm not looking to take that away. I'm like, if that's going to turn into water, let's make sure that that's replaced to the best of our ability as the government authority of White Bear Lake. Also pointing out that, yeah, I mean, I get the closure. I understand that. There's still two other access points to the north, or excuse me, to the east, really northeast. There's still two other access points. As what will be impacted is the Mr. Idle's use of public land. I mean, for your knowledge and/or, I mean, he has 16 spots that are on public right-of-way that he doesn't pay property taxes on. We lease that for $1 a year to that strip mall. So I don't know what we want to say about that, but he is going to lose spots closer to the freeway where that stormwater pond is. I don't know how to address that, with the exception of it's parking that he didn't have to begin with, because it's on public right-of-way, City of White Bear Lake public right-of-way. But I want to support the businesses in that strip mall. What can we do with that to help capture those spaces back? I'm looking at the picture also where basically the two parking spots on the triangle part are going to be gone. So there's possibly two more spots that might be. I'm just asking the state to if this is going to happen, what can we do? Can we reconfigure? Can we, the pie shaped, it's an odd lot. How can we get those parking spots back if this intersection happens? As far as the whole intersection overview, I mean, this is a 40-year, this has been on conversation for 40 years. Talk to the ex-city manager, the city manager that preceded Ellen. It predates him, and he came in 1984. There has been multiple proposals for this intersection that involve stoplights. The state, didn't, for various reasons, never met, improved this crossing and put in a stoplight. Don't put in a stoplight. This is not new information to redo this. So I got to look at this. You folks who are against the rush line, great. That's your prerogative. I'm glad to see you organize. Go out and do that. But we're not the ones that make that decision. I have to make a decision as a council member saying, if this happens, I got to get the best deal I can for what we're left with. And I don't know how you can look at Whitaker and say, well, that's going to add a stoplight. I get that. But White Bear Avenue through Maplewood Mall seems to work perfectly good. I drive it a lot. Drive that almost 3-4 times a week. I don't really want to stop one more time, but I don't see it as a challenge. I see it connecting. I see more benefits to the improvement of that intersection if the rush line continues to go through. Connectivity to the west side, connecting that marina area where we're all wanting to draw to Mr. Idle's business, to Mr. Track's business, to Tally's, to VFW, to the lake. Provide connectivity from the west side. So is this intersection perfect? Nothing is perfect, but it makes sense if the rush line goes through. I'm not looking, that's not what's on the resolution. It is an if not, but for. If it continues, do we want to do this? And it makes sense to do this. And it would make sense if this doesn't happen, and Rush Line, you guys go do your job, that's great. I'm going to come back and say, I want to go work with the state and spend $1.5 million, because that's about the price tag, to redo that intersection, with or without the Rush Line. So to me, the Rush Line is not a part of this conversation. It's happening because, Councilmember Walsh, you're right. But we don't get a vote on that. We get to say, hey, can you help us out here, state? Can you help this property owner reclaim back what you're going to claim is I shouldn't say claim, but you're going to claim for the better good, right? That's what the argument is. I think it's reasonable to improve this intersection, and the cars that are going to be going north are going to be staring right at that Alley Cats. I think Alley Cats might appreciate the stop instead of driving right by. And I'm big on the stormwater. This intersection does not have any stormwater at this point in time. Treatment.
A lot of
Yeah. So, and Goose Lake, if anybody knows me, Goose Lake is a passion for me. So, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Anybody else? Councilmember Ed Byrd.
Madam Mayor. So, almost an unusual evening. Mr. Jones and I are aligned on a couple of topics.
That is unusual.
So, following our last council meeting, I too was interested in understanding all the tools that might be available either in our toolbox or in the state's toolbox to try and make the signage. I am okay with the change in access, but the signage and the whatever accommodations are possible that we inflict as little impact on the business owners in the mall, I would really value. And since we're at 15% design and there's theoretically another 85% to go, I'd like to make it clear that from this council member standpoint, whatever accommodations, whatever engagement, whatever kinds of opportunities and options that can be exercised in favor of that, I'm very interested in. Now, if there are other things that are in our toolbox that we can use, I would be open to understanding and hearing what those might be as well. And so I also honor Mr. Walsh's argument about but for. All right, got it. There's another but for the city's action of providing access to parking spots that are virtually free, those businesses would not be supported as well as they are right now. And so there is an aspect of that that leavens a piece of the conversation. It may not be all of it, I get that, but there is a piece of that long before this conversation, this council, this city, has taken the position of trying to support our business owners in as many ways as possible. We heard it earlier tonight from the Main Street organization. My point is that the city has not set out and does not have a habit of trying to make life miserable when we don't have to, when we're not forced to by other conditions in the world. So I want to put that out as an ameliorating factor. I understand Mr. Walsh's comment about taking property, and I get that too. So at some point in our conversation, I'd like to understand more about what can we do to impact the owners of that strip mall to the least effect possible, such that the closure of the access is not disaster, is not, and maybe even some good.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I drive 61 several times a day usually, and that Whitaker and 61 is the most critical need for access control that I can see. I recall not too long ago having to take a left-hand. I was going southbound on 61. There was a pedestrian crossing. I stopped for the pedestrian. The northbound traffic the person in the left lane stopped. The person in the right lane could not see the pedestrian because of the car that was in the left lane. I had to take a deliberate left-hand turn to stop the oncoming car from hitting that pedestrian. I agree with the other council members that we need to do and what needs to be done to accommodate the businesses so we impact them as little as possible. But this intersection needs to be done.
Thank you. Councilmember Walsh.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, I agree too. I think the intersection is not safe. I talked to the city engineer this summer about where are we at on fixing this thing, and it's like, well, it's MnDOT's deal, and so we're not going to be liable if anybody gets hurt because it's MnDOT's intersection. We can't do it if we want to. And so, Councilmember Jones, you say, we're going to get the intersection fixed, and that's great. Well, what's the price? And that's the struggle with tonight's vote and trying to separate a Whitaker Street, that triggers the two of the three things, and we got to give municipal consent for this little project. But the price of getting our intersection more safe is a bus line for 89 times a day, and all the things that come with it, and all the things that people are talking about why we don't want it. So it's difficult to say thank you, MnDOT. Finally, you're going to come and listen and make our intersection safe. By the way, MnDOT's been consistent over at that time. You got an intersection at Wiper Avenue, you got one at 96, you don't need one in the middle. People can walk either direction. That's the MnDOT position. It's logical. It's based on their science, based on their experience all over the state. They have to be consistent just like we do. So it's great to get the intersection fixed, but the price, we're ignoring the price. We know this rush line thing's going to happen, so nothing we can do about it, so we might as well get our intersection fixed. I reject that. I still think we can throw more logs in the train track in front of this project and slow it down, pause it, make some people. There are future decisions to be made in this project. The federal government, guys, don't do it. Save it for the end. It's going to interrupt everything. And see, you make me lose my train of thought. There are other people making decisions on this line as it goes forward. The Met Council still has to make some decisions, and with COVID and all the change and everything, that this is not a done deal out of our hands. A Ramsey County project, we can't control it, and the federal government has to make a decision whether to fund it. And so they will listen to us. They will listen to other cities. They will listen to things. So I don't think we have to just say, wow, thanks, MnDOT, for finally saying yes to fix the intersection. And the price is a bus line that runs 89 times a day that a lot of people in the city don't want. And here's an idea. And, maybe we should listen to MnDOT. And maybe we should go the other direction and not have a signal there at all and not encourage people to try and cross there. As this process has gone on, we got a lot of emails, and one of the emails I got, and it's anecdotal, they're all kind of anecdotal stories, although it's not a very big town, that the folks in that neighborhood don't use it to cross and come over to those businesses. Now, I don't know that. I don't know if we can run a test and decide how many people walk across that intersection every day, but maybe we got to listen to MnDOT and take the signs down and say it's not a crossing. And by the way, just speaking of the safety of the intersection and everything, the access to 61 from the parking lot is hard to defend. Whether there's a new signal there or even with the current Whitaker Street turn in and turn out, that, if we were going to make the area safer away from all of this other rush line discussion, I have a hard time saying we need that 61 in and out. Actually, it's just an out, right? It wouldn't be an in there. Well, you could come in, but that'd be nuts to go past Whitaker and then turn into that. Maybe people do that. I don't know. There are things we can do to make the intersection safer. Thanks, MnDOT, for letting us get it safer, with the price of a complete rush line bus project. And I don't know, just maybe we ought to think of going the other direction and not having a dangerous intersection there. No light, no sign, don't cross there. Go to the light, go to the other side. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Edberg.
So I'll ask MnDOT. If we say, either we say yes or we say no, and you find a way of avoiding, you deal with the other options available to you under the municipal consent law. Are you going to build this thing if the rush line is not approved?
You knew that was coming.
Well, MnDOT isn't funding this, so Ramsey County is. So it would be up to Ramsey County or well, Ramsey County would have no interest in doing it, I think, but for the rush line. So,
So my point, thank you. My point, Mr. Walsh, is that yes, if rush line is going to happen, again, a decision not under our control, if it's going to happen, yes, I will take part of that money to fix our intersection. If it doesn't go through, then we can come back and have another conversation about how do we fix this. It'll be on our dime and our taxpayers' back, and that's okay. But we can have that conversation after. They are not. It's not one guarantees the other.
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bill, your comments are valid. Your points of fact are valid. They're reasonable. I just happen to disagree with them, especially to the point where, if not but for, you brought it up. If not but for, we wouldn't be talking about. Well, right. And if it does not happen, there's no conversation. And we can have, my understanding, Ms. Heinecker, city engineer, that MnDOT, as long as we pay for it, will put an intersection in there. That's my understanding and knowledge.
Not traffic signals. I don't think
Not
so.
traffic
No.
signals.
No, just a pedestrian signal.
So pedestrian light, no traffic signal, flashing light. Okay, so still rolling the dice and hope they see the lights. All right. So, and Bill, I kind of take issue with what we supported earlier with our public safety building. You're willing to go to the legislature to ask money for that, but it's not. It just seems. How come the rush line doesn't get to go to the federal government and the state to ask for that money to pay for our intersection, to help pay, right? Because you're saying rush line's going to pay for it. Understood the state just said rush line's going to pay for it. And so, okay, well, if it's okay for us to go to ask for someone else's money to help improve a stoplight intersection that I am in favor, someone could say, no, that's wrong, and I respect that. I just see them, it's like the money's coming from the left pocket instead of the right pocket. But the validity is, if it happens, I want to see this improved, bus line or not. The bus line has no impact on this. I hope folks know that I'm for a stoplight. Whether or not a bus line goes through, it doesn't matter to me on this intersection. That's what I'm fighting to make clear. The bus line does not matter to me as far as favoring this proposal.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Engstrand.
I agree with Mr. Walsh. I also agree with Mr. Bean, but a little bit. The intersection is hazardous. I think the driveway should be closed, period, no matter what. I've seen too many cars try to pull out of Whitaker and pull out of that thing at the same time and have to lock up their brakes when they turn at the same time. I don't like this project, though, and I will vote no on this project. I think there's a better way we can do it. Either close it all the way or a walking bridge over it. Yes. And the problem I have with the state is the only way you'll fix that is if somebody dies. Just like at Egan High School or whichever high school it was. And that is asinine. Absolutely. That we've been fighting this for 30 years or longer. And the only way you'll fix it is if we put a bus through. No thanks.
Okay. All right. Further discussion. Councilmember Bean.
Since the issue of the bus came up, I'm just going to I've been doing a lot of walking in the ward, most of it on the east side. And if I don't bring up the subject, the rush line subject does not come up. I bring up the subject by starting out with the story of our chickens and how that was the most controversial thing. And then even when I do bring up the rush line, I say until the rush line, the most controversial thing I ever dealt with was chickens. Even when I say that, less than half of the people want to bring up rush line. And the half that do bring up rush line, the things that they bring up They want to know. I mean, like I tell them that I believe that the city has influence, but we have no control. And we've influenced the rush line to this point by, if it was up to the Met Council, that the stop would be at 2nd Street, where the U.S. Bank's area is. Now it's been moved over to the 8th Street in Washington Avenue. Another way that we've influenced it is the city is going to have the Washington Avenue be a one-way going northbound. That way, the rush line, the bus can occupy the right lane. Cars can, the few cars that use that one block area can use the left lane, and MnDOT will not have to impact any of the Beartown property. So we have to be involved so we can be influential, but we can't pretend that we can stop this, because we can't. It's one of 18 Metropolitan Council bus rapid transit light rail projects, 7 of which are already in place. Several more are going to be, 7 of which are in place. Several more are coming in place in the next several years. This one's set for 2006. There's still changes that are going to be made to it. We don't know if it's going to be every 89 buses a day. As they do the research, as they come along more, they'll make those changes, and they can make those changes. Another way that it was changed is that it's going to be an electric bus, and that was with the help so that it does not impact the Bruce Fentrell Trail, which, by the way, the Bruce Fentrell Trail is the legacy of the late husband of Sue Vento, who was our representative to the Metropolitan Council. She is not going to allow the bus line to negatively impact her late husband's legacy, and it's the so as long as the rush line came up, yes, that's the only reason why I brought it up today, because up to this point it was about Whitaker Street, but it was brought up, and again, the vast majority of the people I've talked to on the east side of 61 have no comment, but there's a very loud group against it and a very quiet group that do not have a platform to express their support that support it, and I've had those people reach out to me also. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To follow up on that, I mean, Councilmember Bean, I agree, but I disagree. From the access of, if these folks want to stop it, stop it. Go. We're not the governing body. On an engineering vote of 15% at this point isn't going to do it. I'm curious where y'all were last Tuesday when the Ramsey County handed over $40 million before they turned the project officially over to MnDOT. Were you there? No.
It wasn't
it's
here.
not our vote.
Wrong meeting.
Well, I mean, so that's where I'm just saying we're at the aspect that happened last Tuesday.
It's morning.
I understand. I'm just like, were you there? Those are the folks, the Board of Commissioners were there. They have the power to do that. That's why Mr. Andy's sitting here. You can say no. That's exactly right. I'm not asking to say yes or no to the rush line. I'm saying, please go do that. I mean, that's why I'm kind of disagreeing with Mr. Bean. I'm sorry I won't join you. But I respect your opinion. There's valid arguments, except for I would just caution you on, I'm going to read part of an email today, if I can, Madam Mayor.
Please do.
Where I just say, you know what, concentrate. I got a lot of respectful emails, a lot, with valid, good arguments, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. But when there's talking to somebody that's saying there's nothing here for the thugs and degenerates to see or do with the exception of robbing, raping, and pillaging our community. I got more than 5 emails with that type of verbiage that are representing this group, and I'm encouraging you to please don't let that represent your voice. There are so many. Shame on me. That's not who you are. So I'm just questioning.
Keep screaming from the audience, please.
Where we're coming from. So it's not our job. And why is the Ramsey County Board, it's no longer there. Now it's at Met Council. Now it's contact your state legislature, contact your federal legislatures. Having a vote, and again, this resolution does not say, oh, you're in favor of this or that, do that. No, it's saying, if this happens, do you want this to happen? And I do. So on the intersection improvements.
Throw everything into the consent agenda.
On that,
It's a member Walsh.
on that point, I got that email too, Dan, but I got to tell you, it was a huge minority of all the emails we got. And I want to say, I just
understandably,
want
yes,
to push
it
back a
was.
little bit, that I think the tone of the debate has been really, really good. And I feared that when we
received
started.
my email.
Madam Mayor, when we had the public hearing here a couple weeks ago, you did not hear people come up to the podium and bring up crime and those people and all those arguments.
Yeah, they
it was
did.
a very respectful debate, and my emails have been that way, and I think people need to be commended on that. We've had a very good conversation on this, and it's going to continue into November, and I want to keep. I agree with you. That was a ridiculous email, and I deleted it and didn't respond to it. But it was such the minority. I think the debate has been very good. It's been about traffic and usage and ridership and our historic downtown and the feel of our town and all those issues. And it's not been about what you're saying. So I don't want to let that go without saying that. So I think the debate's been good. Well, I'm just talking about my experience and what I heard in this public hearing and what I've got in my email.
That's fair.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anybody else? All right, gentlemen, what do you want to do with this?
Madam Mayor, I'll move to approval for resolution for municipal consent for through Highway 61 access change and right-of-way acquisition.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Walsh.
Well, I'm a no on this motion, and I've already mentioned a few of the reasons. I'm very disturbed by the property taking. It's not something we've done, and we're headed down that road with this businessman's property. Also, the signage issue, and we can talk about, we're going to help him, and we're going to negotiate, and we're going to put a sign in a different spot. Doesn't want the sign in a different spot. And, again, it's the but-for argument. Well, he's had these free parking spaces forever. Well, yeah, and what is the reason we're going to end that good deal for this business owner and the people that come to his business? Well, we're going to put a bus, up the line. That's why we're doing it. I don't think it outweighs it. I don't think it wins that argument. I've already talked about this, but for the rush line, we wouldn't be here. To say we can't stop it, I'm not ready to give up on that. I think people will listen. Gem Lake has spoken. I think Vadnais Heights may also speak. If we speak and continue to oppose this, and tonight's vote would be a log in the train tracks. And if you oppose a project, you vote no tonight. You don't say separate the vote until later when we're going to vote no on the big project. But on this little thing, we vote yes. I've been kind of doing that along the way here. I've been making that comment that we've never had the citywide discussion of whether we want this or not. We're finally going to get that, thank you, in November, and I appreciate that. But we've had these.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We decided we would do that in the second meeting in November. The municipal consent vote on the whole project, not just on little pieces. We've been doing this, all along. And Mr. Gitzlaff comes and says, we need decisions on. I've been kind of joking, but the wallpaper in the transit station at the end. Well, we're going to pick the wallpaper, but have we had a discussion of whether we want it or not? And so we're finally getting that, and I appreciate that. And I think it has been a good discussion so far, and I hope we keep doing it. The project doesn't fit White Bear Lake, and just and the whole project doesn't fit. And tonight's vote is one of the reasons, one of the examples of how it doesn't fit. We're taking a guy's property, we're taking down his sign, we're disrupting businesses here. That's another. So it didn't fit when it was. You say U.S. Bank was a good decision. Well, it didn't fit when they said put it in U.S. Bank, and I voted against that decision. By the way, I thought if you're going to do a bus line and you want ridership, you ought to have the stop in downtown. I think it was really stupid to say let's move it over to Beartown. I think the designers that work with Mr. Gitzlaff at Ramsey County made the right decision. You want traffic, you want ridership, have the bus end in downtown at U.S. Bank Stadium. But the neighbors down there said, no way, we don't want that down here. No way. So it didn't fit. So we listened to them, and we moved it across the highway, and I believe it's now out of walking range for this thing to get the ridership it needs. I don't think it's in the radius it needs to be for ridership. you know, I don't think it fits Beartown either. That business owner was very upset with the initial plan. It didn't fit Beartown. We accommodated, we listened, you're right, you know, so we made some changes. By the way, we also bought the houses north of that, which I voted against, which was another reason White Bear was in this project and it didn't fit. For the future, I still think that was a terrible decision on our part, but we own them now. And it doesn't fit today with this Whitaker decision. We wouldn't be here but for the rush line discussion. We could work on the safety of this intersection. I've been bringing it up, and I agree. We had this discussion a long time ago. Should we go ahead and improve the intersection on our own, at our own cost? I think it was $80,000, I think we talked about, to put the lights up, or should we wait until rush line comes through because they're going to do it anyway? And I argued, just do it now. I'm kind of hoping we never have a rush line, but either way, I said, let's do it now on our own dime. We don't want somebody to get killed there. So the intersection safety is something we can do on its own, but we're here today because of rush line. It's a no vote today. It's a no vote on the entire project.
Thank you.
Bill, I know there was discussion about a meeting in post-election. Did you, before you sent out that forum announcement press release, did you ask the mayor, who controls the agenda, if that date works for the mayor?
We had a work session.
Did we specify a date?
We decided in the work session, the second meeting in November.
Did you specify a date
the second
and ask
meeting
the mayor who controls
yes.
the agenda?
We didn't. We
decided in the
talked
meeting
about it, but
it was the second meeting in November, which is November 23rd. That's already on the calendar.
Well, I understand. It's 2 meetings a month. It's always, yeah, I get it. I just wasn't aware.
We had a brief conversation, and that was the last I ever heard.
We decided in that room.
We did not decide.
Wow.
No.
Okay. We're going to have a vote.
Doesn't matter. It
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Conversation. I'm the one that said, yeah, it's legitimate.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Before you put that press release, did you ask the mayor to put it on that meeting? I don't remember saying it was November 23rd, December, whatever.
In November was the decision.
Never. So maybe I have poor recall at that point.
The date is November 23rd. It's decided already. That's the second meeting in November.
Yeah.
So I didn't go back and say, are we sure we're still doing this?
Councilmember Edberg, you want to chime in?
So I don't think it matters.
Either.
We'll schedule it. As a matter of courtesy, Mr. Walsh, if you have not cleared up with the mayor and make sure we have an agenda. And
we're bringing it up one way or the other. So, you know, I hope it's on the agenda. That's what we decided to do, but I'll just make the motion.
Didn't decide that. You did. So let's move on.
The issue deserves our conversation and our action.
So I do have one more final question. I agree with put it on. I've understood that was part of the discussion. Can I bring the state back up?
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure you can.
Love deliberation. Okay, so if it is a no vote tonight, can you tell me what next steps are?
Our city attorney can certainly tell us.
Either way, all right. I'll take my city attorney.
She did.
I'll punish him.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. The point I made to the mayor earlier before the meeting started was, remember how we talked about how inaction results in default approval? I was just noticing the language is purposeful in that a failure to approve still results in a default approval. Yeah. So if this motion fails, then those that are opposed would have to make a motion to deny and have that passed to formally create a denial. See what I mean? So failure to approve is not good enough. You would have to turn around and actually deny it.
At another meeting?
No. It could be at the same meeting.
Okay.
It could be the same meeting. So that was just the point I was making.
So at that point, what happens?
The statute is very specific, and the project can go back and change the design, either to meet any conditions that you would set for approval, or to remove the municipal consent items, or the project can appeal and then an appeal board is set up with somebody from the project, somebody from the city, and then a neutral party.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Who appeals? Who's doing the appeal? The city of White Bear Lake?
No, the project would do the appeal.
Oh, the project would do the appeal.
Okay.
Okay. So after 90 days, I mean, if I say, okay, we say, okay, I want the color of the curb to be green. I want to make sure that that's a green curb. I'm just using that as an example. Is that got to be here now as part of this? Or otherwise it's never going to be green?
No, but if there are conditions set with the disapproval, if the project meets those conditions, they don't have to come back and ask for municipal consent again. They would just be allowed to move forward.
So if
They would send a letter saying we've met these conditions and we're moving forward.
Just override it, huh? Sounds like it.
Anybody see? Yeah.
Madam Mayor, can I take a shot at that?
Please do.
So my take on this is that if this resolution passes, you certainly still have the opportunity to work with the project people to say, I want my green, whatever you said. So that still is in play. What was being talked about with the conditions is if you were in a scenario where the city says, we would approve this if this one thing would change. So I make a motion to deny, but point that out, that it would be different if this one thing changed. That would give the project the opportunity to say, okay, we'll change that. And then we'll send it back, and then they can move forward because they've satisfied your condition to move forward. So you really don't get into the realm of adding conditions to an approval. It's only if you were to deny. Then you would have to explain why you're denying to give the state or the county an opportunity to respond to those conditions. But you still can speak to them moving forward if this gets approved. Does that make sense?
Does. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so here we are, folks. Yeah, let's call the question.
Oh. Well, are you calling the question, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. I think we got a motion and a second, don't we?
Okay. I will ask for a roll call vote.
Council members Edberg?
Aye.
Walsh?
No.
Jones?
Aye.
Engstrand?
No.
Bean?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Passes 3-2. Thank you.
I'd be upset.
Well, you know what's funny?
Thanks, Bill.
The ones that keep yelling that I don't vote. But when you vote some way, they didn't even notice I don't vote to vote. There's something wrong. No, I didn't. I did a terrible job. I just want to get out of here. All right, moving on to 9B, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into contract with Train for Energy Performance Project. Ms. Heinecker.
Okay, thank you, and Mayor and members of the council. I just need to pause here for a moment. We'll have in the audience Thomas Huberty, who was here at our last meeting. He represents Train and went through a presentation.
He had to sit through this whole
Yeah.
thing. Sorry.
He went through a presentation that was presenting the findings from their detailed investment-grade energy performance audit of the sports center and also a city-wide lighting analysis that accompanied that. Sorry, just distracted here for a moment.
Yeah, well, we'll wait till they go out so we can shut the doors, since they like to be disruptive. Polite is not one of their
Add Trader to that list of email nice comments.
Polite is not one of their attributes. Well, okay.
Okay, so I'm back. just looking for the right memo. Anyhow, so we had, as I started to say, at our last meeting on September 28th, we had Tom Huberty here from Trane, and he gave a presentation giving us the findings from that detailed investment grade audit for the Sports Center and also for a citywide lighting analysis. And there was a lot of detail in that presentation. So in the packet that was provided to council, I attached that presentation. I've had some subsequent questions. Thank you from, I think Councilmember Walsh had some more questions about the energy usage. And so I emailed that out to council, and also on your dais, if there's questions that are specific to some questions for use of energy, I did print out the PowerPoint that was given to us by Trane back in January of 2020 that sort of introduced the topic of looking at where there were opportunities to save significant energy at specifically the Sports Center. And just as a reminder, council is aware, but for those who are just hearing this for the first time, we did have our Sports Center renovated, kind of a very significant project. Back in 2018, I think is when 2018. At that time, there was a decision not to go the extra mile and engage in commissioning of that building. And we did experience significant increases in our energy usage after the construction of that facility. So then we engaged with Trane to go through that analysis, and they did find some opportunities. And all of that is stuff that we have reviewed over a few meetings with council about looking at those opportunities for significant savings, as was again presented at our last meeting. So we also have attached to the packet that was given to council in this most recent agenda is really two spreadsheets I'd like to point out, and one would be one that was a staff prepared spreadsheet, and it includes all the projects that we are recommending that were described by Trane at our last meeting. And it would be the improvements at the Sports Center. We also have lighting upgrades at our different city parks, in addition to some of our municipal buildings and some trail lighting. And the payoff for that would be a capital investment of $592,000. I'm rounding it. The simple payback is about 8.7 years. But it's important to point out that of those projects that were identified by Trane, we had already identified in our capital improvement program many of those projects. And the total that we had incorporated in our capital improvement plan, which again isn't a budget, right? But it's what we look at every year to say, here's things that we want to do. And those numbers from that CAP are then put into our long-range financial management plan. And those are how we look at our our fund balances after 10 years. So the total cost of those projects that we had already identified was estimated to be about $285,000. Again, those are estimates. So there's the difference between that, between what is being proposed by Trane for an investment in these energy improvements and what we had already identified in the CIP would be dollars that we had set aside in our preliminary budget for the ARPA funding that we reviewed. So that was that $360,000 that we showed council at a work session. I'm just looking to see if this is all familiar to you. Okay, so this is all information that we had gone through, and just as a reminder, as we look at funding sources, it would be funds that we had already planned for in our CIP. We would utilize those. Some of them were planned for next year, but some were for a couple of years from now. We would just do it earlier. And then the remaining would be funded through that ARPA funding. And then secondly, what's not included in that calculation for that payback of 8.7 years are the racquetball roof and the HVAC system. So that is proposed by Trane. That's pulled out of that equation because it is there's not a payback necessarily. It's just it's a maintenance project, and so took that out of that calculation. And there's some discussions we're going to be having internally and with Trane about those particular projects and looking at that still. So, but it's in here for your for your analysis. And then lastly, and importantly, was the additional conversation that we've had briefly at the last council meeting, but in previous years, we've talked about solar, and specific to this project, Trane looked at the capacity of the Sports Center to handle a rooftop solar system, and did estimates and an analysis based on that, and provided us pricing for what the cost of that system would be and estimates for payback. And so there's really two components to this recommendation. One would be very specific to the moving forward with a performance contract that would allow for those projects identified in the staff spreadsheet that we showed, and it's also identified in the resolution. And then we are also recommending to move forward with that solar project, but that would have to be funded differently. The solar project at this time we would have to fund through bonding. The payback could be paid for through our savings, our energy savings, so it would not be an additional tax levy. So we wouldn't have to pay it back through a tax levy. It would be through our energy savings. But we could do that as part of any bonding we do in 2022 if we move forward with that public safety building, or separately if we don't. So that's where the mechanism would kick in for the solar if the council chooses to move forward with that. Let me see what I'm looking at here to see what I'm forgetting. I think I sort of summarized most of what we've already heard. And so tonight what we're asking for is consideration of a resolution that would authorize us to execute a performance contract with Trane Technologies for energy improvements and renewable investments. And the details of the contract we're still working through depending on tonight's action, and a preliminary review by our city attorney without as I understand it, there's not concern over an energy performance contract, but the details of the contract we would finalize, and then if council is okay with that, we would do that and go ahead and execute it based on legal counsel's review. But with that, I look forward to some comments or engagement and discussion from council on this recommendation.
Thoughts, questions? Councilmember Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to be clear, we're talking money savings no matter what with this.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bean. So we'd spend money up front, and but the payback for those expenditures, as is calculated in the simple payback that we calculated outside of the pro forma from Trane with those projects, was 8.7 year payback. So after 8.7 years, that investment, everything, all of those energy savings are just pure savings. So the operational savings, however, would be realized more immediately at the sports center.
Councilmember Walsh, did you have something?
Well, just some questions on the solar piece. We haven't gone into detail much. I'm looking at the solar spreadsheet, the 15-year capital financing program costs, annual lease payments. So we will not own the solar panels. Who will own the solar panels?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Walsh, we actually will own them, and I think the language you're looking at, I'm not sure why the language is like that on that pro forma, but that would be, there's different ways that Trane articulates opportunities to finance that, but we would actually bond for it. That's if we were, in fact, to get financing through Trane for it, as I understand it. Okay, yes,
so
but we would own them.
We're going to own the solar panels?
We will own them.
So then I don't understand the $62,000 annual lease payment.
Can you tell me which spreadsheet you're looking at?
Thank you. That would be
15-year capital financing, solar only.
Is that the PowerPoint?
Third from the last.
I'm going to have to ask, if I could ask Thomas Huberty from Trane, Mayor, to come up. He can help better describe that. There's different ways that you articulated that.
Madam Mayor, can I add a question onto that, Bill? Is this clear to be separate? So it's okay, energy savings and this solar thing is separate. That needs to be bonded, or
it's in the same resolution right now, but yes.
That's what I but how it gets paid for is.
Yes, to clarify, yes, and then thank you in just a moment, but to clarify that piece of the question is the city would pay directly for all of these improvements. The bonding would only be if the council decides to move forward with the solar. Okay. So if you could describe that spreadsheet that talks about the lease arrangement.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council, it's good to be back. Getting kind of lonely in here at this hour. So what you're looking at, Councilmember Walsh, is there are different mechanisms that could be used to finance this. From a vernacular standpoint, if you bond it, that what is listed as a lease payment would then have to become your debt service on that bond.
Thank you. And Madam Mayor and Councilmember Walsh, to that point, that would be a conservative estimate. We did run some numbers on bonding for that, and we estimated based on the interest rates as of today, I think it was $51,000 using our calculations. But I know that everybody's trying to approach it conservatively, as we did too. So that's what that represents.
Okay, Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Ms. Heinecker, I get that there are a number of options available to us. If we bond, what's our best estimate today? Maybe this is for Ms. Kinswater. What's our best estimate today for what our cost of money would be to do the bond, to pay the bondholders, et cetera, et cetera? What are we looking at for an interest cost? Ballpark.
Sorry, I was hitting the button. I had it backwards. Sorry about that, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Edberg. When we had looked at the what it would cost, it would be about $51,000, but that did not include any of the costs for issuing the bonds for the bond council. Is that the?
I'm looking for the rate of return, the cost of money. What, 2%, 2.5%, 1.5%? What's the cost of our money if we're going to go out and do a bond offering, including the costs of preparing the,
the estimate
bond
that
council and all that
we
kind of good
used
stuff?
Was 2.5%.
Okay. So I'd like to throw one additional idea around. I've already broached this with our finance director and mentioned it to the city manager. I think there is something to be thought about in terms of borrowing from our citizens as opposed to borrowing via bonds. And I think there's a level of engagement that you get out of that and a level of education and familiarity. And I'd be interested in at least exploring it. Looking at the stock frenzy of we have money in our community. It's accessible at no more than 2, because they're getting about 0.05 or 0.1 on their savings account now. I just would like to open up that conversation. We don't have to do it tonight. We don't have to incorporate it into this. But since this is present, I would like to at least throw open that idea of how do we allow our citizens to borrow or to lend us money at a secure interest rate. That's where I wanted to go with that.
Can you do a little deeper? What does that look like? Is it a community bond? What is there a vehicle for this? Are there tools out there?
Citizens.
So it could be a simple loan agreement. Here's where I've asked for some research to be done to find out exactly what vehicles are out there for community finance. But I guess my point is, the bigger point is, Bill, you and I have had conversations about how do citizens be motivated? What are the things that keep them engaged and involved? Okay, and when we put our money someplace, we pay attention in a different way, and it just seems to me that in this whole emerging area, that there may be a place for thinking about how we create a vehicle and allow people to have skin in the game locally and benefit from that, because if I look at what I'm getting in my savings account, it's a whole lot less than 2.5. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, how do we keep money local? How do we recycle our economic development locally? I'm not saying going out for $8.5 million, like we would for a street and whatever else, but I'm just using this as an opportunity to float the idea, what options are there that might facilitate something like that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
To add on to Councilmember Edberg's suggestion here, I can see where there would be a great deal of interest if it was if the loan or whatever it is that the citizens take part in is part of an energy saving project. I can see where we would even get interest from people outside of our city might be interested in participating in that.
I was just going to thank you, Mayor, and to council members, both of you who brought that up. I think that certainly if council decides to approve the project itself, we can continue to research methods of financing it, knowing that if we don't find something that the council is comfortable with or agreeable on that's outside of the regular bonding, that would be how we would need to do it. But very happy to go into some research about some creative ways to approach funding or financing that piece of it.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Jones.
I support this. I think we should move forward. I think very interesting thoughts, aspects. But in the back of my mind, it's more of a reminder to I'm kind of looking at Mr. Huberty and Bill, talk about what happens in 30 years, what happens in 20 years. How much life do we get out of because to me, it's the solar panels are an appliance. It's a furnace. It's an AC unit. I mean, that's the way I kind of look at it. It doesn't have an infinite life. And that's okay. I mean, that's fine. What year, just remind me again for the technology, where are we at today? Are we looking at 20 years of maximum capacity and then they just slowly don't produce as much? Is that a good...
Yeah, almost all panels nowadays are going to be warranted for a minimum of 20 years.
Okay.
For 25, so you have warranties that are
Great.
involved there. Properly maintained, you should see 30 years, let's say, conservatively, worth of use. And to your point, the one thing where they do differ from things like furnaces, they don't have motors and there's not things moving around.
They don't just
They're just kind of there. So there's not a lot of moving parts, but they will gradually lose their effectiveness, the amount of energy that they produce.
Okay. Madam Mayor, can I ask City Engineer?
Sure.
Mr. Kaupe, any issues with maintenance of solar, of dealing with what we're looking at? Any additional costs that maybe your staff or Public Works would be looking at?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the only thing obviously is once and I think the timing of that solar, you time it with the roof maintenance. That's really the true maintenance issue of it. Even as we looked at the project, we looked at what side of the building it would be located on. There was an option located on the opposite side of the sports center facing the pond. However, with the sidewalk and the drive lane there and snow coming off of it, they tend to heat up in the wintertime and snow tends to slough off and would be right on our sidewalk, right on our drive aisle. So we had Train look at it to look at the effectiveness of the solar on the opposite side, is where we landed. So I think as long as you do your due diligence of where you locate them, we've had a few that have been located in other buildings in town that have caused some issues with our sidewalk. So we're learning what that takes. But the metal roof on the sports center, there really is no maintenance on in the first place. So really there's no, so again, we'll try to time replacement of that roof in 30 years or so when we have to, replace the solar.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You brought up snow, though, Madam Mayor, if I can. I mean,
sure, why not?
Sometimes snow covers solar panels and they become completely unusable. And then people have to go up there and shovel snow off those things. So are you confident? Do we have heaters on these things? Do we have electricity current going in there? I mean, that happens. I mean, we get these things covered with a big snowfall, and they're not producing any energy while the snow is on them.
Yeah, no, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, very true. Historically, I think now what you have, you temporarily after a snowfall, if we get 8-10 inches of snow, they're not going to work for a day or 2 days. But the way they are designed currently, you shouldn't see more than a day and a half, 2 days at most with those. Because between gravity, the warming of the panels, their electrification of it, it's going to remove itself.
Yeah. Councilmember Edberg.
Mr. Huberty, I appreciate the work the Train has done. Thank you for thank your bosses and shareholders for being located in our community. Appreciate that. Enjoy that. Appreciate the work that you did in looking at our existing lighting and various buildings. While you're here, if you wanted to plant an idea of what's next. So let's just say, by the way, I support the resolutions, and I want us to do it, regardless of how we finance it, I want us to do the work. But what's next? Where would you look next? Well, it's electrically solar powered.
I mean, I do think, and I did bring this up at our last chance to be together. I think you have an opportunity, and you talked about it tonight, that public safety building, and that one where it's located, right in the downtown, City Hall right here. The importance of that structure. I think you have some exciting opportunities, cool opportunities for to do some interesting things in there that can drive the long-term value or savings in that building by leveraging some new technologies, whether that be things like solar PV for electric generation, but also potentially solar thermal, geothermal. I think there's a couple of avenues you could look at and explore there that when you're building that new addition could provide a pretty long runway for savings for the city. That, and I do think the whole downtown redesign or reimagination opportunity, I think there's some interesting things that could be done there if that would help both operationally from a maintenance standpoint, but also from a safety security standpoint as well.
With those, let's say we did something, is that mostly just to replace energy we would otherwise be buying from the grid to operate, or would we actually be creating enough energy to net export, or what? Give me a sense, just sense the magnitude that you're talking there.
There's always the opportunity to create a net zero building. That takes a lot of planning, and it takes a strong conviction to do it, because it will cost you more up front. There's no two ways around it. And I think the challenge becomes, what's that balance of, how can we take a step forward or a couple steps forward, but also realize that it's not a finite, or it is rather a finite budget that we have, and those constraints that you have to work in. So, like on the solar side, in my experience, you would never want to oversize a solar array, so you're exporting back to the grid. Xcel Energy won't give you a whole lot for that money that you're giving back to them, so it just doesn't become cost effective. So working towards net zero, it would be, the closer you can get, the better from a sustainability standpoint. But then kind of balancing that with the political reality and the financial reality of what you have to do.
And so my last question, and I know that we're late in the design game for the public safety building, which I support and I want to stay on schedule. But I also want to be assured that we are making ourselves available for opportunities for operational efficiency. And my sense is, if you're going to look at geothermal, you are best doing that before you put concrete on the ground, because you need to be thinking about, where are you drilling in and where is it coming back out? And I don't get a sense that we've incorporated that into the work that Wold has given us so far. So that being said, I know that our roof is intended to be, on that building, is intended to be strong enough and structurally placed well enough that we would be able to install solar in the future, should we wish, should we find those numbers compelling. But I'm not clear that these other options have been thoroughly and here's my question earlier in this meeting about where are we at, what can we do, and how do we ensure that that gets incorporated into our thinking. Maybe not our doing, but at least our thinking.
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, and Councilmember Edberg, I almost forgot your last name.
Well, I called him Engstrom last time, so it's all good.
And Council, So we did talk about that a bit at the last meeting, and since then had additional. We continue to have conversations internally at the staff level. Talked a bit with Tom and his team about where we're at in our project, where we're at in the process right now with WALD. We still are bringing back. I don't know if it's going to be beginning of November, end of October, sometime in the next month or so. We are bringing back information or recommendation about how we move forward with working with our general contractor and kind of that big planning phase. As part of that, that is our opportunity then to have that, whether there's different ways to structure it, but whether it's more direct with a company like Trane or someone like them, or whether you have a Trane-like company serving as that third party that's going to go and look at all of those decisions related to mechanical decisions and engineering opportunities to optimize the building's performance. So we will be bringing that back for some additional conversation at the council level.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so getting back to what we are at hand here about.
Okay. Let me help you.
Councilmember Walsh.
I want to move the resolution so we can get on the table to discuss and vote on. So I'll move the resolution in our packet.
Travis, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to amend the resolution to remove the solar project. And let me just, I'll make the motion in the speech, and maybe nobody will second it. I can count votes. But let me say something really unpopular. Solar is stupid, and there's a couple reasons. I won't make a long speech because we've been here a long time, and I may not convince anybody, but I'm just going to say it. Solar is stupid, and there are two dirty little secrets about solar. The first is the cost. It's great. We're going to feel great about ourselves in the city of White Bear Lake. We're going to put solar panels on the roof. We're going to get some energy back. We're going to feel awesome. And Xcel Energy has all these programs to incentivize that, and there's money in the budget for it, and we're going to save money over time. It's going to be good for the city. Financially, works for the city. It's a good financial idea. The problem is, the dirty little secret is that Xcel is being told to do so much solar in the state, and solar doesn't work at night, doesn't work when it snows, it's unreliable, and doesn't work very much, doesn't put very much back into the grid. So when you look at the whole system, Xcel Energy still has to power everything through the next polar vortex. And so what happens is they raise rates on everybody else. So while we feel good about ourselves as a city putting solar panels on the roof and saving money, my constituents around live around the sports center are going to pay more to Xcel Energy and the other power companies in the state of Minnesota. And that's a fact. Since we've done these renewable energy mandates, from Tim Pawlenty, my former boss, on. We used to be a low energy cost state. We are now a high energy cost state. We have just blown past the average, and we're now high. That's the first dirty little secret. The second dirty little secret is there's not enough metal to make all these solar panels, to do these grand dreams we have for solar. And I know this is just one little installation on our little roof, but to get the metal we need to do Green New Deals and to do solar the way politicians talk about it, Minnesota would need a huge percentage of the cobalt, for instance, that's available in the world to do solar panels like this. And where does the metal come from? Another dirty little secret. It comes from the Congo. It comes from child labor. It comes from China. China controls a lot of the metal that's needed for these solar panels. So we can feel good about doing solar in White Bear Lake, and it's a good financial decision, but our constituents are going to pay more for energy, and the metal for the solar, do some research. I just encourage people to do their own research, but man, solar is stupid. I just moved to take that solar piece out. That's my motion. And I stuck my speech in without even the second, which maybe was unfair.
Duly noted.
I don't think there's going to be a second if I got a guess, but I could be wrong.
Is there a second?
I didn't hear one. That's why
I'll second it just to continue the conversation.
Oh, come on. That's good.
Well, Bill, I get that. You got my attention, but not for tonight. You want to bring that back? You want to do that with him? You want to give me paper facts? Don't tell me to go research. I get it. I understand that. I mean, things drive me crazy with stormwater. Reduce waste, reduce water, and we're going to charge you more for your stormwater because you reduced your stormwater. But it's a good point. But tell me, can I save taxpayers X amount versus they're going to pay more in bills? I'm interested, but not for tonight. But I would be genuinely interested, and I don't think we have to decide on that tonight.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second with the provision to remove the solar piece. Is there any further discussion on this? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The nays have it. Now moving back, does anybody want to make a motion?
We don't need to. It's already on
It's
the
already
table.
out there.
Sorry. All right. All right. Any further discussion on what's on the table?
For the record, I support the other half of it. I think it's wise. I like the way the financing's set up. I think it's a great project. I support the other half of it, although I'm
Okay.
going to vote against it.
All right. Any further discussion?
Because the solar's
Do we
still
have a
there.
second for the?
We do.
The main motion is ready.
So, all right. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Moving on to, thank you. Through
Thanks,
this
Mr.
very
Hagerty.
lengthy evening.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Train.
next time
Thank
I'll put
you.
you closer at the front of the agenda, not at the back.
Madam Mayor,
What? I do too. Well, let's take a little pause, a little recess here for a minute.
And a personal privilege.
Yeah, this time, take a break. You didn't take a break last time. Take it this time.
See what my watch was going. My
That is cool. That is so cool.
That is, isn't that, what exactly do you do with something?
I don't want to see it in my back.
All good. Nope.
Thank you.
That is so cool. I don't want to see it in my back.
The good news is that it's dull, so I actually am not worried sitting next to him because
do a
it's
lot of
not
damage.
sharp.
It can still do a lot of
I was going to
damage.
say blunt force trauma is coming to mind as opposed to,
A million little cuts.
Because I'm not sharp.
In the men's room with you.
I wasn't going to go
Okay, well, then
there.
we're going to go without him. I'm not going to wait. I don't know where he is.
Thanks for working through that. Holy buckets.
Well, we've got the, yeah.
I got my master key.
I have a master key. I don't have a master key. Otherwise,
Everybody's
Pissed.
Let's go.
Okay, I like it.
I'm a GM key.
What else is new? No.
that's the master.
Okay, let's go with 9C. Resolution authorizing purchase of all-inclusive playground equipment and grant acceptance for Lakewood Hills Playground. Ms. Mr. Copy, this is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you know, the Lions Club of White Bear Lake has donated so far $300,000 towards construction or purchase and construction of playground equipment for Lakewood Hills to complete an all-inclusive playground. As we were finalizing our design and with the Lions Club as well as the playground manufacturer, they kept letting us know of different price increases that were coming for supplies and the equipment, as well as an opportunity to get it to apply for the Lions Club to apply for a grant towards that equipment. Nice. So we applied for that grant about a month ago. We received a $117,000 grant towards that equipment.
Wow.
What that will allow us to do is purchase that equipment ahead of time. There's still fundraising that the Lions Club needs to do to complete the project, probably about $250,000. They're also working on some other opportunities from contractors, local contractors, to do some of the earthwork and pavement or the play surface upgrade, as well as from the Lions Club International. They're expecting somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 grant that will be done there. Over the winter, the Lions Club anticipates doing a more capital fundraising campaign throughout the community to raise the rest of the money. So hopefully next year can construct that playground. So with that said, staff would recommend council adopt the resolution that would authorize staff to purchase that equipment. It would be put aside until next year. Actually, would not, if we order it tomorrow, it would not be in until probably May or June of next year. But we recommend that council adopt the resolution to authorize staff to purchase that equipment on behalf of the Lions Club.
Move to approve.
I have a vote. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That's marvelous. That's just an all-inclusive. This is a very exciting.
Sorry, follow up, tiny quick. So you said an additional $250,000. Is that on top of the $300,000?
Correct. So the total, Madam Mayor, members of the council, the total project cost at this point, we're finalizing stuff. It's going to be in the realm of $550,000 to complete the entire project. But the playground manufacturer is anticipating in November another 15% increase in price. And they also anticipate price increases next year. Anecdotally, there's a couple of other projects in town, including one that we saw, if you remember, back in August, we approved we do a playground funding grant for schools to do playgrounds. Forsadi has ordered their playground equipment, and they don't know when they will get it yet. They anticipate next spring sometime as well. So even people who have ordered it, it's taking almost a year to get the equipment. Talking with others, it's similar across the metro. So to be able to order this, to get it, to lock in on a price is very advantageous for the project, whether we build it next year or not.
All right, moving on to 9D, resolution establishing 2022 group life, health, and dental insurance for employees.
Members of the council.
You had to wait all night for this.
I have. This has been exciting. All regular employees that work for the city have the option for their benefit package. There's the health insurance that the city pays a monthly contribution to, and the city pays for the life insurance for the employees. As part of the benefit package, there is supplemental life, dental, short-term and long-term disability. The city does not make any contributions towards these insurances, but they're available for the employee to buy. So the city is required to do an RFP for our insurance services. The last RFP we did was in 2018, and then we do one on a 5-year cycle. And usually you can go out and do an RFP off of the 5-year cycle, but typically we don't if the quotes that we get back from the insurance company are a reasonable increase. So we have been working with Medica. In 2018, the Employee Insurance Committee, which is made up of representatives from the bargaining units and the non-bargaining units, voted or recommended to the council to choose Medica as the health insurance provider. They've been our provider since 2018. There are 6 plans for the health insurance that employees have the option to choose. The employee can make the choice that works best for them and for their financial situation. There's some limited provider options that are there. It's always been out there trying to figure out if the city is its own group for getting its health insurance, and what would it look like if the city could join into a larger group if we could get better rate increases or better rates and more coverage options. During 2021, we were invited to join the LOGIS has an insurance consortium, and the city was asked to participate. And so our employee insurance committee said yes, they'd like to be included that to see what the rates would look like if we were with a larger group. As it came back, the insurance was higher. Some of the benefits were not as good as what we've had. So in considering all of that, the Employee Insurance Committee recommended negotiating with Medica. So as we proceed with Medica, the overall rates are 9% for the 2022 insurance coverage. And as we look at the other insurance coverages, the dental and the life insurance and the short-term and long-term disability don't have large increases. The Employee Insurance Committee recommends that the City Council approve the resolution establishing these options as employee insurance benefits for the employee groups. And just a reminder to the council that the council is just being asked to approve the insurance plans at this point. This is not approving any of the city contributions for this coverage. That will come back to you in a meeting in a further date.
Okay, council, any questions?
Move to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
One comment, Mayor?
Yes.
Just thank the employees that are taking the time to look at this stuff. I mean, I'm assuming a volunteer position. That's super exciting.
Oh, I love that you're super excited. Okay. With that, is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to communications from the city manager.
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, just one thing. I just want to make sure that we, over the next week, well, especially today, pay attention to your emails. I know that you had correspondence from Mark Casey with information about the upcoming interviews, and which will be again on the 20th. So I just want to make sure that you pay attention to that. And I think, Kara, I don't know if things were printed out and council has
We've
some
got them
information.
here.
Good. Okay, so there's that. And then I don't really have anything else right now to update council on. I don't know if either Ann or Paul, everybody's kind of wiped.
They don't have anything either.
I think we're good. I think with that,
I would
we'll call it a
entertain
night.
a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. You're having so much fun, you want to stay? Okay,